Hello, this is Arisia Gaming here. Play a lot of Oxygen Not Included, and a lot of Oxygen Not Included spaced out. About 1,450 hours in it. And I wanted to discuss today all of the different buildings that you can build in this game. Your duplicates are trying to build a colony, and there's so many options for you to build as you research more and more technologies. And some of these buildings you have to use, like ladders, wires, tiles. You can't really build a colony without them. But others are a bit more subjective, like how effective are transit tubes, or do you need an algae terrarium in your colony? What about a gas reservoir? And I wanted to help give my thoughts on which buildings I like, which ones I don't like. It's quite a subjective tier list. It's just buildings I find useful setting up my colonies will be in the S tier and the A tier. And then buildings I really don't find useful and I think can be sort of traps that aren't really worth the effort are going to be in the C and the D tier. And then I've got can't avoid good, so stuff like ladders, tiles and things. Can't avoid bad for stuff like the regular batteries. Like, you have to build them at the start to get the power to research better batteries. So I thought they'd go in their own little box. And then no strong opinion is buildings where I haven't really got a strong thought, and this is where chat comes in. I'm recording this tier list live on Twitch, and chat can come in and say hi. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to discuss each category of buildings as they show up in the menus. Might want to consider just chatting. Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll set it to just chatting. Yeah, here we go. Good idea. I haven't done this before. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, no strong opinion is for buildings where I either don't really feel strongly about them, and people can chime in if they have opinions, or they're buildings I just haven't got around to building yet, and I don't really know enough about them to really give it as a good option. So without further ado, let's actually start the list. We're going to start on all the base related buildings. So, airflow tiles. I quite like these. When you're setting up your base at the beginning, you're going to have a lot of carbon dioxide floating around. If you build with tiles and you build like long floors, you can end up with large pockets of carbon dioxide. And if you build an airflow tile every now and then it will let some carbon dioxide out. Dupes will be able to breathe more. It's pretty good to put under beds and things. I'm going to put it in B tier though. I don't use them too often. I usually separate my rooms out with doors, and then pneumatic doors, and then they provide a lot of airflow. But these are also good for containing lots of liquids, because they won't take pressure damage. Like if you set up an infinite liquid storage, you can use airflow tiles for that. So I'm going to put it in B tier. Automatic dispenser. I don't tend to use these very much, but they are pretty good for just storing all of the stuff in your base in like a hole, where like it can, like your dupes can grab stuff. Then you don't have to go to storage bins everywhere. You can fit all of the debris in your base in one place. And it's also handy early on when you're just trying to wrangle eggs and drop them off in a place. If you drop them in a storage bin, the eggs can go off and the critters might not hatch if you don't remember them. So I don't tend to use this too much, but it's got some niche uses, so I'm going to put it in C tier. Spaced out. The bunker door is really useful in the base game because the main asteroid has lots of meteors, and you need to have bunker doors to protect your solar panels and get everything set up. But in Spaced Out, you don't find those until the regolith asteroid, and these doors are very cumbersome and they don't really have a use until that point. So I'm going to put them in D tier for now. Like, you don't need to build them until you get to the regolith asteroid. Bunker tiles, I'd say, is the same thing, more or less. The kind of things that I would use bunker tiles for, I would just use metal tiles for, unless you're dealing with insane amounts of pressure damage or meteor damage. If you're going for pressure damage cases, like where you've got a large liquid storage, I would rather just use airflow tiles because they just don't take damage at all. So I'd really only use bunker tiles when you're using them with bunker doors, and because you have to make them with steel, there's better things you can do with your steel. If you're just using it as a metal tile, just use a metal tile and use it with a more common metal. Carpet tiles. I like these. I don't like to tend to put these everywhere, but I'll put them under beds, I'll put them under mess tables, places where dupes spend a lot of time. It helps keep stress down. I imagine that'd be easier on the harder difficulties where dupes get stressed a lot more. It does slow down your dupes quite a lot, so you don't want to put these everywhere. But they're pretty good by stations like metal refineries, that sort of thing. Places where dupes are going to be standing around a lot. Fire poles, I'm going to put these in S tier. You could definitely make a colony without fire poles, but the downwards movement speed is so good. You usually, in your main base and in your access routes around the colony, if you can fit a fire pole next to your ladder, you really should, because they'll move around so much faster. Either in the base where they're doing stuff day to day, and they spend a lot of time, or on that one route where they're going to the other side of the map. It's going to save them a lot of time either way if you have this in combination with ladders. So this is a really good building. Gas reservoirs. I don't really have that much use for these. They don't actually store a huge amount of gas in them. The pressure capacity isn't very high. And if you're trying to store a large amount of gas somewhere, it's quite easy to trick a vent into not overpressurizing and making a sort of infinite gas storage. So I usually do that instead of using gas reservoirs. There are some uses like equalizing temperatures of gases that go into them, and if you just want a place to store all the waste gases that build up, like natural gas, chlorine, if they just ended up in your base and you just want to stick them somewhere and forget about them, it's not a bad option, and then you can filter it from there. So I put it in C tier. Insulated tiles are really good. You want to control where heat goes. If you have a room with, say, like a volcano in it and you're trying to get the metal out of it, you want to keep the heat from the volcano away from your main base. And the best way of doing that is either to have a vacuum or to surround it with insulated tiles. Insulated tiles aren't perfect, but they let out a very, very small amount of heat. Small enough that you can practically ignore it in most cases. You can vacuum out a gap instead and get a perfect heat seal, but most of the time insulated tiles are good enough. You can surround your base with insulated tiles to prevent it from sort of heating up, making sure your cooling is cooling off the areas you want it to. It's very practical, much more practical than installing vacuums everywhere. But what I tend to do is if I make a heat sealed room, I surround it with insulated tiles, and then the exit that the dupes go through, I put a vacuum in there, and then the heat won't leak out of that. So yeah, really, really good. Definitely build when you're trying to control heat in an area. Ladders, you can't avoid using them. Well, I mean, you probably could, but you don't want to just... You shouldn't. Like, you're going to need to build ladders places just to access stuff quickly and easily. Like, you could build S-shaped tunnels everywhere, but you're not going to. It just makes it so much easier to lay stuff out. So I'm going to put these in can't avoid. Like, you shouldn't be building a base without ladders. But eventually there may be better alternatives, which we'll see in a minute. Liquid reservoirs. I keep these higher than the gas reservoirs, because one situation that you might find yourself in is you've got a liquid that's full of germs, and we want to get rid of the germs. And in that case, what you want to do is you want to pump the liquid into a reservoir that's surrounded by chlorine gas, and that will kill the germs off in the liquid reservoir. And you can hook them up in series and equalize the temperature of the liquids in the tanks. I feel like there's more use cases for the liquid storage than the gas storage. Again, it doesn't store a huge amount of liquid. You're mostly using it just to put liquids in a place. But the other advantage of these is you can stick them... Well, this and gas reservoirs, I suppose, but these are much smaller. You can have a tank, fill it up with water, and then when the tank's about to overflow, you have the overflow drain into these, and it just helps you fit more liquid in a smaller space. And that's more relevant for liquids and gases because you have liquid pressure damage to deal with. Otherwise, you're going to surround everything with airflow tiles to avoid that liquid pressure if you're compressing it all. I just find these more useful in general than these. Manual airlocks. I don't really like using these. I think in most cases that you use a manual airlock, you may as well just use a mechanized airlock. The one case where I think you do use this is when you're deconstructing them and using the bug that lets you create natural tiles by deconstructing manual airlocks. I don't tend to use that bug either. I feel like they're going to patch it out at some point, but yeah, I'm going to put these in D tier. I just don't generally use them that much. These are definitely better. I put these in S tier. If you're trying to make like a seal, like with a door, like pneumatic doors just let gases flow freely. It's not going to be a perfect airlock, but it's better than nothing. And if you're trying to automate something, like automating doors opening and restricting space, it's the best thing for that, because you've got the wire, you've got the automation signals. You can do a lot of stuff with this. And there's also door compressors that you can make. If you get these to open and close in sequence in certain ways, then you can delete gases, you can delete liquids and stuff, and it's very useful. Maybe not S tier. I'll probably put it in A tier. Mesh tiles are pretty good. Sometimes you'll just want to separate off a space, and you won't want to stop liquids flowing through it. I do find them useful. Like what I like to do is if you've got like a building that leaks liquids, like a mechanical surfboard, you put it on mesh tiles, the liquids leak through it without flooding everything, and then it just goes in the water storage where you want it. I generally find myself building mesh tiles more than airflow tiles. I think there's just more use cases overall for letting liquids and gases through than just gases. And you can build these instead of airflow tiles if you want, just to let air move around between rooms. And it also lets liquids flow. So I think they're more useful overall. You can also use pneumatic airlocks to enable and disable buildings. This is very true. So in our current run, we have a thermonullifier that we're using to cool down some water. And you can't directly automate them. But what you can do is you can stick the building on top of a pneumatic airlock, or a mechatronic airlock. A mechanized airlock, that's what it's called. And if it's open, the building doesn't have a floor, so it stops working. So this lets you automate a lot of things that you can't normally automate, like manual rad bolt generators, that sort of stuff as well. So yeah, lots of use cases for that. Metal tiles. Yeah, these are really good. I'm going to put these in A tier. They're very conductive of heat, so you want to use these to transfer heat around a lot. If you've got like a heat source, you're trying to convey that heat to something. It's good for that. There's also a run speed bonus compared to regular tiles, so your dupes will run on these faster than normal tiles. If you have an abundant amount of just refined metal from volcanoes and you've got nothing else to do with it, making metal tiles for your dupes to run around on is pretty good. They have high decor. I'm actually going to put these in S tier. They're really good, and I usually end up, if I have the metal, I'll usually end up replacing every tile in my base with these. And then there's also the heat conduction that lets you build machines. Like, I know I built a magma volcano tamer that relied on these to conduct heat effectively. This is the other advantage of the mechanized airlock, is that it's basically a metal tile that you can turn into a vacuum at will. If you surround this with tiles, close it, and then open it up, it can either conduct or block heat very easily. Yeah, I'm going to put this in S tier as well. There's so many builds and designs that rely on this. Like, it's very useful. Plastic ladders. I'm going to put these in S tier as well. They are optional, but they're ladders that your dupes can run on faster than regular ladders. The only thing is, they will melt at high temperatures. Like, let's just double check quickly. I think it's like 150°C. Yeah, plastic melts at 160°C. So don't use them in cases where it's going to melt. But other than that, they're just strictly better than normal ladders, and plastic becomes renewable fairly quickly if you have Drecos, if you have oil wells. You can replace most of your ladders with plastic ladders. And then we've got plastic tiles. These are pretty good as well. I'm going to put them up here as well. The run speed bonus is really good. Plastic is easy to come by if you have Drecos or oil wells. Like, eventually you just end up with loads of it late game and you don't really know what to do with it. Just making all your base tiles plastic can be good as well. The key difference with metal tiles is that they're a thermal insulator as well. They're not as good as insulated tiles, but you'll notice that it blocks heat transfer. So if you want a floor for your dupes to run across that doesn't conduct heat, the plastic tiles are probably best. But I'm mostly going to put them in S tier because they're actually maybe a bit more sustainable. I don't know. It depends what your map's like. Pneumatic doors. I don't know. I don't really have a strong opinion on them, to be honest. Like, you kind of have to use them early on if you want room bonuses, but you don't necessarily need room bonuses early on for the morale unless you're playing on the hardest difficulty. Separating rooms is obviously good. Keeping critters out of places. I guess I'll put it in A tier. Like, there's a lot of use. Plastic doesn't provide as much decor as metal. That may be true. So the metal tiles provide 15 decor, and the plastic tiles provide 5 decor. So that is also true. However, I usually find that late game, when you're replacing all of your base tiles, you have other sources of decor that are much stronger. So I find it usually doesn't make that much of a difference. But yes, the metal tiles do have more decor. This song's a little bit louder than the other ones. And then we have smart storage bin. This is really bad. I don't like it. You need to power it all the time to get it to work. It's just not good. Like, it permanently draws 60 watts of power. You're better off, as it says in the wiki, you're better off just automating like auto sweepers and stuff to move things around. I would just never use this. It's kind of a trap, and you're just going to end up wasting power. And it actually generates heat as well, just from storing things. It's not good. I can't really think of a case where I'd want to use it. Then you have the regular storage bins. I mean, yeah. They're a means to an end. There's cases where you want to move stuff around and move it to a certain area. Like, if you're digging around the oil biome early on and you find a load of lead, you should definitely build storage bins to bring the lead to your base. And then the dupes can take out large amounts of lead and use it to build conductive wires instead of going back to the oil biome back and forth all the time. But equally, you don't just want to store all of the debris in storage bins. You don't want to make that a super early priority because it's going to take a lot of time, and a lot of the time your dupes are better off just picking stuff up off the ground. So it can be a little bit of a trap to build these too much and try and prioritize filling them too much, but they do have uses. You can, like, eventually, if you want to store all the debris on the map somewhere, you probably would actually use one of these, but they're very useful early game for moving stuff around. So I'll put them in B tier. And then tiles, you can't really avoid them, but you're better off tiling spaces than leaving them just terrain when you can, because the run speed bonus of 25% is significant, especially in the early game when your dupes don't have a lot of athletics skill. So yeah, not much to say. You can't really get very far without them. They're pretty good. All the transit tube stuff, I'm going to put this in B tier. Transit tubes are pretty good. Once you have plastic production and you have a little bit of power, being able to get dupes around independently of their athletic skill is good, because the tube is a fixed speed regardless of how much athletic skill the dupe has. Fire poles are about as fast going down, and if your dupe has like 20 athletics, they can run across tiles pretty quickly, almost as fast as a transit tube. So the main use case is making sure that new dupes or dupes with low athletics can go across the map without difficulties. You don't really need to build them before that point. You don't need to rush transit tubes. Fire poles are good enough. Plastic ladders are pretty fast. But they're okay. Although one thing I would say is make sure when you're wiring these up, wire it so you're not overloading your wires. Like, well, when these charge up, they don't overload the wires, but they draw 960 watts each. So if you have a load of them in series on a conductive wire, they're going to draw the full 2 kilowatts out of the conductive wire, and nothing else will get power while they're charging. So watch out for that. Try and, if you have lots of transit tube entrances, try and put them on separate wires if you can. or just hook it up with transformers. And then window tiles. If you want a solid tile that lets light through, you don't really have much of a choice. There's a lot of decor as well. They're fairly niche. You can use them with solar panels to like walk around on top of solar panels. What I like to do is when I have like a beach chair room, I'll use window tiles and just stick a load of regular lights up there. And with these window tiles, you can fit enough lights up there that they'll get the max morale. There's like even without the sun lamp, and it saves power. There are use cases. It's fairly niche. If we just have a look on the wiki, it gives a little bit of decor, not very much. There's no run speed bonus. The one thing is as well, if you make them out of diamond, they are very conductive as well. So that's another way of transferring heat to things instead of metal tiles. So yeah, they're pretty good. But then I don't generally use them as much as metal tiles. And yes, they also do let decor through from surrounding objects. Like I know you can have a spore kid surrounded by window tiles and you get all the massive decor bonus from a spore kid, and then the dupes obviously aren't breathing in the spores. So that's another use for them. But I don't tend to build this too often in my playthroughs, so that's why I'm putting it in B tier. I've realized I haven't actually put a lot in A tier at the moment. The mini pod, I don't usually prioritize building this. I'm going to put it in C tier. The only real, like, once you're on multiple planets and you want to have a printing pod on the other planets, the only thing you need it for really is printing off a dupe of the planet you want. If you've got resources, you could literally just have a conveyor line go from your printing pod to the supply teleporter and take it to the main planet there. I guess it makes more sense if you're trying to print stuff off at very remote planets, but you shouldn't rely on that anyways, because the stuff you get from the printing pod is random. Like, you can't just have your dupes waiting around on the tundra planet waiting for a shipment of barbecue to not starve. It can be convenient, but I haven't built one of these yet. Even on the one dupe per planet run, I don't think I built one. And that's all of the base buildings. So that's the first category done. I think I was fairly sure about most of these, and I'm going to cover the oxygen ones in a minute. Yeah. So moving on to oxygen. Algae terrariums. I do not like these. I'm going to put these in D tier. They are technically more efficient at turning algae into oxygen than oxygen diffusers. However, they require a lot of dupe labor. They pollute a lot of water. You either have to manually deliver water to them, or have a pipe constantly leak water onto them, and then partially submerge them, which is possible. But then the key is that they produce lots and lots of bottles of polluted water that will off-gas and have to be moved by dupes somewhere. So your dupes are going to be constantly running into this room instead of doing all the stuff they're supposed to be doing in the early game. And at the end of the day, there's a limited amount of algae on the map. Until you start going into space and finding algae in space at points of interest, you are going to run out of algae regardless of whether you use these or not. So I don't think there's ever a case where you should set up a room full of these instead of just using an oxygen diffuser and using the spare time from that to transition over to a more sustainable oxygen source. So I just wouldn't recommend building these unless you want a challenge. Carbon skimmers. These are pretty good. Your base will fill up with carbon dioxide fairly quickly. I'll probably put it in A tier actually. Your base will fill up with carbon dioxide fairly quickly if you're using like coal power plants, if you've got a lot of dupes. If you're using wood burners especially, but I wouldn't recommend doing that for power anyways. It pollutes water. It doesn't pollute a huge amount of water, and you can just hook it up to a water sieve and then just effectively turn sand into polluted dirt and get rid of all the carbon dioxide in your base in the process with a fixed amount of water. So it's pretty good. It lets you go down to the bottom of your base. Initially, you'll be digging pits for your carbon dioxide to fall into. This lets you kind of stop doing that, like with your main base. I find it very useful to prioritize setting it up early on. If you can, if you've got water plumbed, if you know where the bottom of your base is going to be, you can set one up, and then your dupes will be running around. They'll be more efficient because they won't be going to breathe all the time. And if you have lots of coal power plants, which you probably should in the early game, unless you're going for the achievement, like the super sustainable achievement, I think it's the best way of managing it early game. Deodorizers, these are pretty good. When your dupes breathe in polluted oxygen, they breathe in 30% more than usual because of yucky lungs. And the other thing is, if your dupes end up in chlorine or hydrogen, and then they go into polluted oxygen, the eye irritation debuff won't go away. So they'll be stuck with the minus athletics penalty until they get back into clean air, which can be very significant if you're playing on the swampy asteroids, and the plug slugs are like producing hydrogen, or like you accidentally let some chlorine out, or you let natural gas out of a natural gas vent. You do want to clean up your oxygen. And the other thing is, it turns sand or filtration medium into clay, which you can then turn into ceramic, which is fantastic. Like, that's the main way you get ceramic most of the time. You don't usually dig it up from maps. So yeah, these are really good. They do require a wire to go to them, but that's not a problem. Yeah, definitely I put it in A tier, maybe even S tier, but you don't need to use them all the time. It's only if you have a lot of polluted oxygen in your base. If you've got polluted dirt off-gassing, or even polluted water off-gassing, you can stop them from off-gassing and then not have to worry about these. So I'll keep them in A tier. Electrolyzer is an easy S tier. This is how you're going to get most of your oxygen and most of your playthroughs. Turning water into oxygen reliably is really good, because there's lots of water geysers in the game. The water usually comes out hot. The electrolyzer oxygen comes out hot, but if you put in hot water, you're kind of getting rid of heat because of the thermal mass of the water is much more than the thermal mass of the oxygen and the hydrogen. The oxygen is easier to cool. And yeah, you're going to be using it a lot. Obviously, you've probably heard of the self-powered oxygen machine. You can use the hydrogen from the electrolyzer to power the electrolyzer and all the gas pumps to move the oxygen around. There's many different builds online. I like to build a submerged variant. There are non-submerged variants that people use more often. But this is how you're going to get most of your oxygen starting, like once you're out of the very early game, most of the time. You've got the oxygen diffuser, which just turns algae into oxygen with power. It's not as efficient as the Algae Terrarium, but it is quick and easy. If you build one of these, you can just forget about it until you find a better oxygen source. You've got a plan to make sure you don't run out of algae, but just if you have algae on the map early on, just build one and save yourself the headache. I mean, you can set up electrolyzers really early, but I mean, the only other thing I'm going to use the algae for is feeding Paku. And even then, you don't need to feed them algae all the time. So you may as well use it early game and focus your dupes on doing other things than generating oxygen. It basically gives you extra time in the early game. Rust Deoxidizer, I don't tend to use this that much. I used to use it a lot because I wasn't confident with sort of filtering the gases out for electrolyzers. Rust, let's actually have a look at the recipe quickly. So if we go here. So it turns rust and salt into oxygen, a little bit of chlorine, and iron. So there are some maps where you have a lot of rust and some salt. You probably have a saltwater geyser you can feed this with. And then not only does this give you oxygen, again it's hot oxygen like the electrolyzer, but that's fine. It also gives you iron ore. So this lets you turn all the rest on the map effectively into metal ore, which is limited. So that's really good as well. You do get a little bit of chlorine out of it, but it's quite easy to manage that. You can filter it off, send it to Dash of Salt Vines, send it to Squeaky Puffs to turn it into bleach stone. It's not, I don't think it's that bothersome. I think it's less bothersome than the electrolyzers, but the building just is quite niche because you're not always going to have rust, you're not always going to have salt. But in the cases where you do have those things, they can be worth building. I'd put that in B tier. Sublimation Station's pretty good as well. I put this in B tier again because it's situational. If you've got like a swampy start where you have a lot of polluted dirt, you're going to want to speed up the off-gassing, turn it into polluted oxygen, and then that's how you're going to get most of your oxygen. Those swampy maps have a lot of polluted dirt, so you can run off these for hundreds of cycles depending on how many dupes you have. And you do need to deodorize it, but you can build them together fairly easily. And it can last a long time. But again, it's quite niche because it's only on the swampy asteroids you're going to have enough polluted dirt to use this. Really. The regular battery... Oh, actually, yeah. So that's all the oxygen buildings done. So let me know if you have any thoughts on these. I think I've explained it pretty well, but I just don't like algae terrariums. Hey Leofar, how you doing? We're doing the tier list of buildings for oxygen not included. I'm just kind of like splitting up each section of the menu. There is a lot of these. Look how many icons we've got left to go through. But yeah, next category is power. So the regular batteries, you can't avoid building them because you need to actually store power to sort of run your research labs. You don't necessarily... I mean, you could just have people run on manual generators, but don't. Just have a battery. But you want to replace it as soon as possible because they don't store a lot of battery and they just produce a lot of heat. A lot of the energy leaks out as heat. They're just not very good. So replace them as soon as you can, really. They're not actually awful for like heating areas. They're not very space efficient. Yeah, they're very small. That's the main benefit. Coal generators. I'm going to put these in A tier. They're really useful early on. You'll probably have a lot of coal on a lot of maps, especially if you've got like a Terra asteroid start, but jungle biomes are full of coal. If you start ranching hatches, you're going to have a lot of coal. The power is relatively free. Your dupes don't have to run on the wheel. You can get this set up very early on with some automation to not waste the coal. The carbon dioxide produced is pretty low, very manageable. The heat is quite high, but it's still manageable in the early game. Just don't put it next to something that is needs to be cool. Thanks for the follow, Common Sense 301. How you doing? Next on, so yeah, that's A tier. It's very easy early game power. Almost always worth building, but sometimes you might not have a huge amount of coal to do stuff with. So there is that. Conductive wires. I'm just going to put the conductive wire stuff in S tier. It's really good. You're going to be using this for most of your wiring. Regular wires suck. 1 kilowatt is not a lot of capacity. There are many buildings in the game that draw more than 1 kilowatt, and you can't actually hook those up with that like a metal refinery. So eventually you're just going to want to set everything up on 2 kilowatt circuits and then connect them with transformers to like a larger power wire if you need to. So I don't think that needs too much explanation. Just 2 kilowatt circuits are good. Heavy watt conductive wire and heavy watt wire. I'm going to put these both in A tier with their associated things. Once you have an established base and you have lots of different power sources, like say you have a couple of steam turbines, you have a natural gas geyser, got coal plants, maybe a few manual generators, it's gonna be more than 2 kilowatts. And you need to run all that power somewhere. You can either have lots of small circuits that are independent but can be prone to failure if individual generators aren't filled, or you can have a heavy watt wire, connect everything up with transformers, and then centralize all the power in your base so all of your power producers and consumers are connected. And that's what heavy watt wire is really good for. I'm going to put them both in the same tier. Heavy watt wire only goes up to 20 kilowatts, but it's made of metal ore. If you don't have a lot of refined metal, it can be more useful. Whereas the conductive wire is 50 kilowatts, and it's made of refined metal. And there's a slightly lower decor penalty. You don't want to build these everywhere because they have a massive decor penalty, and the wires can't travel through tiles without joint plates, which are quite awkward. So definitely shove this wire somewhere where it's hidden, and then where your dupes aren't going to go, and then connect off of it with transformers. I might as well do the transformers next while we're here. So regular transformers are put in A for that reason. Not mandatory, but really good if you're using heavyweight wire. You plug the large wire in the top, you plug the small wire in at the bottom, and it limits the power draw to 1 kilowatt. If you're running it, you can have one run onto a regular wire, and that won't overload the wire. You can have 2 in series connected to the same conductive wire, and it will draw 2 kilowatts total. And that's what I do most of the time. So yeah, they're pretty good. The large power transformer is similar, but it lets 4 on. It transmits 4 kilowatts, which is kind of an awkward number. So I don't tend to use them as much, but they do fit in a smaller space. I'm just going to put these in the same tier. They do fit in a smaller space. They're made of refined metal instead of metal ore. There are situations where you want to use this instead, but they're usually used together. So I'm just going to put them together. But transformers are definitely good. Centralizing your power and connecting it all to one system, I find really handy. Just managing everything. The rust. I'll talk about your comment in it once I finish the power section. So then, if we continue, we've got the hydrogen generator. These are really good. I'm probably going to put these in S tier because you're always going to have hydrogen, because you're almost always going to be using electrolyzers to reduce your oxygen. And this lets you turn the hydrogen straight into power with a minimal amount of heat produced and no other byproducts. It's just very straightforward. And you're always going to, unless you're playing a map with very little water and you're solely using rusty oxidizers to get oxygen, which isn't going to work forever, then you're going to be using these at some point. So I think S tier makes sense for these. Jumbo batteries, pretty good. They're much better than the regular batteries. They're very useful in cases where you don't need to automate power. Like if you've got a load of manual generators, they'll automate themselves because the dupes will stop running when it's full. They store more power than regular smart batteries, or well, smart batteries, and they're made of metal ore, which is more abundant early game. If you're controlling a power source, you obviously want to hook it up with a smart battery for automation. So I put it on S tier because it allows you to actually save coal, save all of the resources that you're pumping into your power. You need these to not waste your resources. But the jumbo batteries do store 40 kilojoules and the smart batteries only store 20 kilojoules. So there are some cases, like if you just want a large battery bank and you're going to automate it somewhere else, you'd build a lot of jumbo batteries and then you'd hook the power sources up to smart batteries to control the draw. So that's where I tier those batteries. Manual generator, you can't avoid it. I'm actually going to put these in good because not only do they provide a little bit of power, if your dupes are idle, they can just run on the wheel, and A, it fills up your batteries, and B, it actually improves their athletics and machinery skills. So if you have a load of idle dupes, you can just get them running on wheels, even connected up to just like a light bulb that isn't like connected to a battery. And you want your dupes to have high athletics, and you want your operators to have high machinery. So even if you stop using them after you hook up your coal power, eventually it's a good idea to build a gym with manual generators that your dupes can run on when they're bored. And then they'll be more productive elsewhere. So yeah, I think they're pretty good. Natural gas generators. I'm going to put these in A tier. You're not always going to have natural gas, but there's usually natural gas geysers around, and that, I mean, yeah, they're pretty good. Like, they produce some carbon dioxide in a pipe. You can send that to a canister filler and then load your soda fountains with that. Or you can just vent it into space. It's not a huge problem. They convert the natural gas into polluted water, which can be useful if you need polluted water for plants, or just to filter into regular water. The power generation is significant. The water just comes out of this nozzle at the bottom, so you do want to have like a pump to clean up all the water, but they're pretty good. Obviously, if you're doing like sour gas boiling, you're turning all your oil into natural gas, you obviously need to build like dozens and dozens of these to handle all that power. So that can be very good late game. But you're not always going to need them. Like, if you just have a map where there's not a lot of natural gas geysers, and you're not really using... Like, if you're not really using that much oil, then you don't need them. But even when you're using oil wells, you'll produce natural gas from those, and you'll want to get rid of that eventually. So you might as well turn it into power. So yeah, they're pretty good. Petroleum generators. I don't tend to use these. They're pretty... If you've got petroleum, if you've set up a petroleum boiler, or if you're just manually refining petroleum, you can turn it into power, but I don't find it very useful to do that. Like, either... I usually find when I have petroleum... Get out of here, Henry Cavill. I usually find when I've got petroleum, I'm either using it for plastic production with the polymer presses, or I'm sending it to a petroleum rocket to fly somewhere. If you're trying to get power out of it, these do generate 2 kilowatts each, but they produce a load of carbon dioxide. Like, let's actually go and look at this. So they produce 500 grams a second of carbon dioxide at 110 degrees plus, and they produce a lot of polluted water, 750 grams per second. So that's a lot of waste products. And if you're oil refining with an oil refinery and dupes are doing that, that's a lot of investment to get the power. Like, a lot of materials, a lot of dupe time. It's not great. As you say, Frank, as a tank, you do use these with ethanol, and I haven't used them that much for ethanol. But yes, you can put ethanol in them and they do the same. If you've got trees, you can feed them polluted water, turn the lumber into ethanol, feed that to generators, produce more polluted water from that. I haven't actually explored that very much, but I think, Leofar, I think you were the one doing the calculator with the arbitraries, weren't you? I definitely remember people talking about it. There are a lot of things you can do with ethanol and these petroleum generators. And obviously, if you want a lot of carbon dioxide, it's a good source of that. So they're a bit more niche than the other power generators, but they do have their uses, especially for certain late game builds. I would put them in beta. Power switches. Oh, this is the power shutoff. So I don't tend to use these, but there was one case where I had some power wires, and I basically wanted to fill up a battery over the course of a day, and then at the end of the day, that battery would discharge into the recreation buildings, like the jukebox and stuff. And I found the easiest way to do that was to hook the battery up with a power shutoff to disconnect it from the rest of the circuit. So, because if I ran the jukebox on the conductive wire, it was going to overload the wire. But I could use this to stop the wire from overloading when I use those buildings at specific times. I hooked it up with like a cycle sensor. So it's pretty niche, but it does have uses. But I don't think you need to do that long term. I think eventually there's better ways of doing stuff than using these. Solar panels. I'm probably going to put these in S tier. Like, they're great. Once you have glass production, they only cost glass. In Spaced Out especially, there's no asteroids on the initial... there's no meteors in the initial asteroid. They're only on the regolith asteroid, which is very late game. They don't generate as much power in Spaced Out, but it's basically free. Like, they're not getting heated up by space, they're not generating their own heat. If you have the glass, you can just set these up and get literal free power. It's not a huge amount, but it is there, and you should, like, as soon as you can, practically do it. It's often worth doing. So I'll put that there. Steam turbines. This is an obvious S tier. Like, can't avoid it. Yeah, I mean, you definitely don't need steam turbines for the early game. Obviously, there's a load of things you can't do otherwise in the late game. Like, what they do is they suck up hot steam and they turn it into 95 degrees water and turn the excess heat into power. So they delete heat, they provide power from that, and they heat up a little bit themselves, but you can cool them down a lot easier than you can cool down the steam. So they're very useful early on. They're very useful later on, I mean. But there's some cases where you don't necessarily need them right away. Like if you have a gold volcano that's erupting and you're trying to get the gold out of that, you can just pour water on it. You don't necessarily need to turn into steam. There's not that much heat generated. I'm only really using the can't avoid tier for stuff there where you literally can't play the game without building it. But yeah, steam turbines are very useful. Deleting heat outright is extremely useful. Getting water out of hot sources without using liquid pumps is good. Because instead of consuming power to run the liquid pumps, you're generating power instead. Yeah, I like them a lot. Then power switch. I don't tend to use these. I don't like, unlike the automation switches, I don't find there's too many cases where you want to manually turn a wire off. I mean, let me know if there's any cases that you've come up with. But I don't think I've ever used this in the whole time I've had the base game or the spaced out stuff. Regular wires, they're pretty bad. I wouldn't recommend using them like after you, like once you can replace everything with conductive wire, you might as well do so. If you're building a very small self-contained circuit that doesn't require it, then you can build it, but it's lower decor than conductive wire. So even in those cases, I would probably recommend just replacing them with conductive wires. You've used it for self-powered systems that suddenly failed to self-power. Interesting. Then the last power generator we have is the wood burner. So I don't use this for power. You shouldn't use this for power. Lumber, like you're growing trees, you're getting the lumber. If you want to use it efficiently, you'll turn the lumber into ethanol and use the petroleum generators. Hey Max, hello. Welcome, welcome. We are currently doing a tier list. We are discussing the buildings in Oxygen Not Included spaced out, and we're ranking them, having a chat. So I may do some regular ONI after this, but there's a lot of buildings on this list, so I kind of expect to just do this all evening. So I thought, because it's going to be such a long video, I might as well stream it and let chat contribute. What I'm doing is I'm splitting it up into each of the sections of the build menu, and then I'm having a little gap in between so we can discuss things. And we're just finishing off the power section. I'm just talking about wood burners. I don't tend to use them for power. If you want to get power more efficiently out of the lumber, you may as well use a petroleum generator, get the ethanol. But yeah, as Leofar says, the main use is CO2. It generates a lot of CO2. Like 300... yeah, like you get 170 grams per second of lumber. And the building is very small and self-contained as well. So I use this a lot on my one dupe planet. Oh my god. Oh my god, an anonymous gifter is gifting 5 subs to the channel. That is ridiculous. Thank you so much for your generosity. I really appreciate it. The fish all really appreciate it as well. Sorry, minor detour while we're finishing off the power section. Fish are really enjoying it. The frogs are in the little tank there, and you can't really see them, but there's one actually right there on the plant. I don't know, maybe you can see it. But yeah, thank you so much. That's absolutely fantastic. Yeah, Whiskers is saying hi to all the new subs. Right, let's get back to let's get back to the list. Wow, that's very generous. But yeah, wood burners. I use those to generate carbon dioxide. If you're trying to set up carbon dioxide rockets on the spaced out setting, and your dupes aren't going to exhale enough carbon dioxide to run those rockets reliably, you need a source. And if you've got forest asteroids, they're really good for that. Like, just have some wild arbor trees and feed them. Feed the wood burners, the lumber. You'll have enough CO2, just hook up some automation, and you can run those carbon dioxide rockets wherever you want. And the other thing is, if you're trying to fill a room with carbon dioxide, like if you want a gas in there that's not going to conduct a lot of heat, or as a sterile atmosphere for food, you can stick a wood burner on top of it, have some airflow tiles, and then just fill the room with CO2. So that's what I use them for. They're not used for power, really. They're used for generating CO2. The power draw is only 300 watts per generator, so there are circumstances where you want to generate a lot of CO2. It's not typical, but they do exist. And that's the power section. So there was a comment on the petroleum generators. The polluted water can be harvested to recycle either for oxygen or for running the oil reservoirs. That's a very good point as well. So when you're processing your oil, you do get enough polluted water out of the petroleum generators that you can quite effectively recycle that back into the oil wells after filtering it or boiling it. I would recommend boiling it. And I actually did a video about this, how to effectively recycle stuff. You can either do it with petroleum generators. It's easier to set up, and you do get enough water out of it that you can scale up to any number of oil wells. And then obviously if you set up sour gas boilers and you're turning all of that oil into natural gas, the amount of water you get out of the natural gas generators is higher. Like with the petroleum generators, you get 37.5% of the input petroleum back as water. The natural gas generators, you get 75% of the natural gas back as water. So it is more efficient, but it's a lot more complicated to set up. So for most purposes, if you're trying to recycle water for oil, petroleum generators are the way to go. But equally, natural gas guys are common, so that's why I've rated them higher. So yeah, they're my thoughts on the power section. So let's move on to food. So, airborne critter baits. These are fairly niche. Like, what I would say is, if you've got puffs in an area and you're trying to move them to like a ranch, and they're like on the other way of the map, these, like, you're gonna have to set up a string of these. You're gonna use a lot of like bleach stone or phosphorite or whatever to attract the puffs. It's not ideal. What you should actually do is just set up a critter drop off and set it to auto wrangle, and then even though you can't manually wrangle shine bugs and floating critters, you can auto wrangle them with this, and you'll still net them up with like the net gun and tie them up. They're not amazing, but if you're only trying to move a critter a certain distance and it's not convenient to set up a room, they do have it. They do have some niche uses. Like on my current run, I had a shine bug that I was trying to lure over to the hermit in his special room, and the shine bug went quite a way to get that, and it was quicker than setting up an auto wrangle. But yes, as Leofar says, it's for babies. Oh right, you're being literal. I thought you were being funny, because you can't auto wrangle babies. Yes, you can't auto wrangle babies. However, the babies don't tend to stay babies very long, so that's also quite niche. You can just wait until they're adults most of the time, but it is occasionally more convenient to just use a bait if you're just trying to move one critter. So I'll put it in C tier. Critter drop off is S tier. If you're trying to move critters for your initial ranches early on, it's really good just to wrangle a hatch and put it in a room. You can move the eggs. It's fiddly moving the eggs. You usually just want these in your ranches in case you find more critters across the map. You can just stick them in your ranches or into a spare room. You have to worry about moving eggs. There's no reason not to use these. Only thing I would say is, if you're building them in rooms that get very hot, like Slickster ranches, make sure you build them out of heat-resistant materials. So in this case, you build it with metal ore. So you'd want to... I think you can build it with steel as well. But yeah, so Wiki says you can build them out of gold, amalgam. I'm pretty sure you can build them out of steel. So yeah, make sure to remember to do that. Then we got the critter feeder. This is pretty good as well. You don't necessarily need these. You can just have conveyors drop food off on the floor, but it is nice. Your dupes will deliver to it. Fairly self-explanatory, really. Makes ranching critters easier. You can filter the foods. It's basically a storage bin the critters will eat out of. Yeah, it's not bad. Not much to say about it, really. Critter traps. These are very niche. I don't tend to use these. You don't have access to plastic really early on when you probably want to use it. You mostly just use them for slicksters, I believe. I mean, the wiki just seems to mention slicksters. Has anyone actually used this for anything other than slicksters? Because what I usually do instead is I just grab slickster eggs. I think they work on fish too. But there's also a fish trap, which is a different building. The fish trap is this building. And I'd say the same as well for the fish trap. Generally, I just move Pacu eggs around, and Pacu reproduce very often. So usually you can find an egg to move to where you need it to. You don't need to move the actual fish. So I generally don't build these. And early on, when you're trying to set up your initial ranches, you're not going to have plastics. It's kind of difficult to do it anyways. Late game, once you've got loads of plastic, you can do it. But, I mean, it's not really that needed. Fish trap for Pacu from the pod if you don't have water nearby. So, if you put them on ground, do flopping Pacu go in them? I've never actually tried that. But if they do that, then that is a bit more useful. I've seen Brothgar accidentally catch walking critters and critter traps as well, so you've seen trigger on any critter that can walk over them. Yeah, I guess it's true, but then why would you consume plastic on critters that you can just wrangle? I mean, it is a bit better being able to catch them from the printing pod. I still don't think I put them above D, but I think they're probably more useful than the regular fish traps. Oh no, I see what you're saying. You put the fish trap down and then into the critter trap. I'm just gonna leave them in D tier. I think they're pretty niche. Like, maybe occasionally you'd use them, but most of the time, I don't think it's worth the plastic. And yeah, as you say, they can melt into naphtha if you're trying to get slicksters. If it's really hot. I don't think there's many natural biomes that are really hot, so that would probably only apply to like molten slickster ranches, I imagine. But anyways, I need to move on. I've got so many of these to do. Egg cracker. It's okay. If you've got like early on, if you're ranching hatches and you end up with sage hatch eggs and you don't want them, you can turn them into omelets. It's not too bad. I find that if you manage things pretty well, you generally don't need this. But equally, if you get like long hair slicksters or shove bowls and you really don't want them reproducing, just delivering the eggs here and making omelets out of them is pretty good. So I put that in B tier. Grill, I think A tier. I mean, it's not absolutely fundamental to cook your food. Like, you may be able to generate enough calories without cooking your food or grilling it. But a lot of ingredients are grilled. You get extra calories out of cooked food. My big gamer with the little Pacu badge, or not Pacu badge, the Platy badge. Very nice. Yeah, turning meat into barbecue is good. I don't think there's that much more to be said. You do need a dupe with the cooking skill to do this, but it's one skill point in, so it's fairly easy to pick up even by just a random dupe. And the one thing I would say is if you're cooking a lot of meat, put in more than one grill. Otherwise, your cooks are going to get overwhelmed and you're going to have meat just sitting there being eaten and not being cooked. And the other tip is, if you're making omelets, you don't need a grill. You can just put the raw egg in like a steam room and turn it into omelet, because raw egg to omelet is a state change. So you don't necessarily need it for making omelets. You can also cook them with heat. But yes. In some cases, you need the grill to use the gas range. That's very true. Like, if you're trying to make surf and turf, you need the grill to make barbecue. I think it's an A tier. Gas range, I put an A tier as well. Like, obviously, the grill is what you're going to use early game. But once you've got more stuff in your base, being able to make even better food is really good, both from a morale point of view. This is, like, high tier food is a very large source of morale. So it's very impactful if you can make surf and turf, or something along those lines, like stuffed berry, stuff that uses pincher peppers, stuff that uses those things. I mean, we can have a look at the recipes quickly as well, actually. Like stuffed berry, surf and turf, I make those a lot. I think those are the main two that I make, but the extra morale is significant. The extra calories is pretty good as well. Like, it's pretty good. And then later on you got stuff like frost burgers. I haven't made the mixed berry pie yet, but I imagine that could be quite good as well. But yeah, it's pretty good. I'll keep going through the food section and I'll answer other unrelated questions. So farm tiles, yeah, these are really good. Fairly straightforward. Compared to planter boxes, just being able to put them as tiles and build rooms around them is useful. Hydroponic farms are useful as well, but some plants don't need pipes. So like Dash of Salt Vines, you don't need hydroponic farms. They're just made out of dirt, the farm tiles, whereas the hydroponic farms made out of metal. So they both have their different uses. I'm not going to talk too long about them. You just need them to plant different plants. If you're delivering water or liquids to plants, hydroponic farms are a lot more efficient than farm tiles. You should never use farm tiles unless you have absolutely no choice for growing plants that require liquids. Yeah, they're pretty good. Fish feeder. I put this in pretty good as well. Mostly because Pacu farming is essentially free. Once you tame the initial Pacu with the fish feeder, you only tame Pacus. Happy Pacus will sustain themselves indefinitely. They'll lay 1 egg per lifespan, even when they're glum. So if you can tame a Pacu and breed it, you can keep increasing your number of Pacu linearly with the amount of breeders, and that will increase your rate of food production. And you need the fish feeder to scale that up. You would start off feeding your initial wild Pacu with algae. You'd set it to 1 kilogram of algae at a time with an auto sweeper, so the fish would constantly be eating from it and getting that 8 from feeder bonus, which reduces its wildness. And then once it's done that, you would set it to seeds, because Pacus don't eat that many seeds. They're very filling, and you'll be generating a lot of seeds from your other farms. And then just feed the tame Pacu seeds, and it's very cheap. And yeah, you want to make sure that when you're feeding the fish, they're not cramped. When you've got your glum fish that have come from the breeder and are sustaining themselves, you've got to make sure they're not cramped. So make sure to move all the eggs out, put them somewhere else. I have several YouTube videos where I built Pacu tanks. So yeah, they're pretty good, and you need that to farm them. If you have access to Pacu, I would just recommend doing it in most cases. It's fairly easy to set up. Fish feeder, the fish release, I don't tend to use this that much. You use this in combination with the traps, but I usually find it easier just to move the eggs. So I don't tend to actually use these at all, because you should be moving the eggs rather than making fish traps most of the time. Don't waste your plastic on that. And then we have incubators. I'm going to put these in... I think I'm going to put these in B tier. So they take a lot of power, and they let your eggs mature faster when they're in there and the dupes are coming by and lullabying them. It does require dupe interaction, it does require power, but it does speed it up significantly. So if you're trying to get your first glossy Dreco hatched and start breeding them, then this lets you speed that up, and that can be worth the power and the dupe interaction. You can set up incubators with automation so that they're only powered when the dupe needs to hug them, and then they can be unpowered and still have the bonus. And then you can get around a lot of the power use, but that's quite complicated. And I generally find once you've got a ranch, you end up with enough eggs that you don't need to incubate them afterwards. So I don't tend to permanently have these in my base. I tend to use them to jumpstart my ranches, get the critters I need in a decent number, and then I remove them afterwards. So they're pretty good. But yeah, the fish release functions well for what it does, but I just don't tend to use it at all because I don't tend to use fish traps, and I don't think you should. So regardless of whether it was bugged or not, I think I'd still put it in D tier. Just probably not worth using as opposed to just moving the eggs. And then we got the micro musher. This I'm going to put in B tier as well. There's a few food recipes that are good with this. You're going to use it early on, but I don't think any of the recipes in there are really mandatory. There's several runs that I've done where I haven't used those recipes at all. Obviously, if you just completely run out of food and you have dirt and water, you can make mush bars, which will feed your dupes in a pinch. But generally, you shouldn't need to do this. Lice loaf is a bit niche. You're basically turning water into calories, but it's a lot of water. The main purpose, as Max says, is the berry sludge. Berry sludge is a relatively high quality food that doesn't go off. It doesn't expire at all. So this is pretty much, I think, the best food for space travel, because you can just stick it in the rocket and it's never going to go off. So you need the micro musher for that. You don't necessarily need berry sludge for space travel, but it does make it a lot easier. Like, I've done runs where I've just had Pacu in the rockets and they've eaten cooked fish just by killing the Pacu in the rocket. But yeah, if you're doing a lot of space travel, you probably want berry sludge. So yeah, I think B tier is a good place for it. Actually, maybe A tier. I think you can argue A tier. Early on, it's going to save you from starvation, if that's relevant. If you have meal lice, you might want to make lice loaves every now and then. Tofu is pretty niche. You're not generally going to be growing nosh beans. Berry sludge is a very good late game payoff. So yeah, I think I will put it in A tier. I think it's worth having one of these in your kitchen most of the time. Like, eventually you're going to get to berry sludge. I wish this website wouldn't show these ads constantly. It's really annoying. Planter boxes. They're okay. Early on, planting your mealwoods, they're fine. They have a negative decor penalty compared to farm tiles and hydroponic farms. But the other thing is, Drecos won't eat out of them. They'll only eat out of the farm tiles and the hydroponics. Although, the only thing they eat out of the hydroponics is pinch peppers. Usually you just use farm tiles for that. But yeah, planter boxes are right in the early game. I put them in B tier mostly because you could use these in cases where you'd have the room be insulated tiles. Because farm tiles aren't a particularly good insulator. So if you're trying to make a heat-sealed farm specifically, you might be better off with this. But equally, you could just put insulated tiles around your farm tiles. They might just throw off your base layout. But, yeah. They can eat out of planter boxes if they're next to a raised tile or next to a wall. Really? I did not know that. I don't think you generally use that, but it is interesting to know. Records have to be on level with the base of the plant, even one tile adjacent. That's very interesting. I need to actually come up with a slightly better Dreco Ranch design. So maybe we'll use that later on, I don't know. But that is the other thing, is it's a farm bit that doesn't use up a tile of space. So occasionally when you're doing some ranches and you're trying to make sure that the room is the right amount of empty tiles for the ranch, you can use planter boxes to make sure you don't go over the limit. And yes, they don't obstruct airflow, and they're easier to cool than farm tiles. That's true. I think B tier is a pretty good place for them. Ration boxes, I don't know. I mean, they're decent early game. I'm actually just going to put this in no strong opinion. Like, you start with one. I mean, you start with one. You could deconstruct the right way if you really wanted. Being able to move food is good. Eventually, you're going to probably convey your food around and drop it off with chutes and automation. But it's fine in the early game. I just don't really have an opinion on it, to be honest. It's just something you start with, and you're probably eventually going to move on from. Refrigerators. I don't really like refrigerators. Generally, this will get your food down to... Let's actually have a look at the wiki quickly. Let's just make sure that I'm not picking stuff up. So, it cools the food down to 1 degree C. And it uses power while it's cooling it down. It uses 120 watts. But then once the food's at temperature, it goes into energy saving mode, so it only draws 20 watts. So that's not too bad. But importantly, it doesn't change the atmosphere of the food. So that can still contribute to spoilage. And it doesn't freeze the food. It doesn't go down to minus 18. So it will still go off eventually. So yeah, generally, yeah, as you say, my bin gamer, I generally have a room that I specifically cool to freezing temperature, and I dump the food in there. But You do need to build it to use a spice grinder, because that's how the kitchen room works, for some reason. And they can be handy for just storing food on rockets and things. So there are some cases where I use them. I think it is mostly just for being a place to store food. It is a vertical storage instead of a horizontal storage. So I'm going to put ration box in C tier as well. I think they both belong there. You generally want to move on from them, but they're not. They do have occasional uses. The refrigerator is tall, so if you've got like a 2x2 space, you could fit 2 refrigerators as opposed to 1 ration box, and even if it's unpowered, that can be quite good. So, yeah, I think C tier is a pretty good place for them. And then finally, the wiki doesn't have an icon for the spice grinder yet, so I just took this picture from one of the promotional materials for the spice grinder. I think B tier, I think either B tier or C tier is really not mandatory. So of the 4 spices, Rocketry spice, like you make these with seeds and random materials on the map. Rocketry spice, I think, is pretty useless. You don't need to give your dupes extra rocketry skill by eating spiced food. Rocketry skill has such a low effect on the actual stuff your dupe does, you don't need it. The freshener spice is good. It reduces rotting. If you don't have a freezer set up, that is good. And if we have a look quickly at the recipe... Oh. No, don't do that. There's not actually a spice grinder page. I'm sure there is. Let's just have a quick look. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, it uses mealwood and salt. You're probably going to have mealwood seeds on most maps. Salt could be a bit harder to find, but if you have a saltwater geyser, you do have renewable salts. It's pretty good. And yeah, it increases the freshness of the food by 13% per cycle. So it does seem like you could put freshener spice on food, put it in a freezer, and it would increase in freshness back up to 100% if you got rid of all the other factors, which is entertaining. And it does let you put off doing freezers, so that's certainly useful. You'll have those 2 things. Brawny spice giving people extra strength is pretty niche. Generally, your dupes are going to have a decent amount of strength anyways, because we're going to be giving them supplying skill for the carrying capacity bonus. So they'll generally have pretty good carrying capacity. So I don't think you'd use brawny spice that much. Water weeds can also be a little bit hard to come by. And you don't want to use your iron on spice for food, I don't think. So the other spice that I do use is... Brawny spice is my favorite spice girl, nice. Yeah. Machinist spice, I do use this. Blossom seeds can be quite easy to come by, depending on what map you're on. If you're doing a Terra map, you'll have lots of blossoms, probably. And then slime. You usually want to actively consume slime, because otherwise it's just going to sit there off-gassing. So if you have any slime on your map at all, you might want to make this. And what you can do is you can set this in the consumables menu to feed all of your operators only the machinist spiced food, and then the operating boost is significant. So I have used this on playthroughs. I used it on the Rhyme Time playthrough to refine all that steel a bit more quickly, although that didn't end up being very useful. It is a use case. So overall, I think the spice grinder goes in B tier. It's good early game with the fresher spice, lets you help hold on to your food a little bit if you can set up the kitchen. And the machinist spice is good late game, but I probably wouldn't bother with the other 2 at the moment. So yeah, those are all the food items. If you have a chlorine vent and a salt mines, you can have a renewable form of salt as well. That's also very true. And then the fridge could be used in CO2 and hydrogen to keep food safe. Yep, we discussed that. That's true. I think we've caught up with everything on that list. So yeah, this page is already looking pretty full of stuff, but we have a lot of stuff to go. Realistically, I think I'm going to be another 2 hours probably, which is about what I expected. So, moving on to plumbing. Bottle emptiers. These were the bane of my existence last night. Like, like if you want to manually deliver liquids somewhere with a dupe, it's very useful. They'll deliver 200 kilograms at a time. If they've got like a pitcher pump, you can enable auto bottle, and they'll just pump it out of reservoirs. Very useful for moving liquids. If you don't, if it's a one-off and you don't necessarily want to set up a pump or power it, it's very convenient. But the one thing I would say is, if you're trying to fill up somewhere quickly, put in a lot of pitcher pump, put in a lot of bottle emptiers. If you've got a lot of small bottles hanging around, because what I did last night was I had a big pool of water all over the map. I swept it up and I had lots of little bottles of water that hadn't been dropped off anywhere. I was trying to fill a gap with water very quickly, and the dupes kept delivering like 100-gram bottles of water to this thing, and it can only have one errand stored at a time. The dupes aren't going to queue to fill this up. It can only handle one bottle of water at a time, so it can be very slow in those cases. So in those cases, I'd either use a pump or put in lots of bottle emptiers. It can be a bit cumbersome. I think in most cases, if it's a long-term case, you want to set up a pump and maybe even meter valves with it or something instead of bottle emptiers. But they do have their uses. They're very useful if you just want to do something quickly and don't want to set up all the infrastructure. So I think B tier is a good place. Insulated pipe, I think this goes in S tier. Like, being able to move liquids around and not have their temperature change, very, very good. You generally build this out of igneous rock. It's a pretty good common insulator material. And yeah, like if you've got cold water and you want it to cool somewhere down, you use the insulated liquid pipe to move it to the place you need, and then you swap it for regular or radiant pipe. It's pretty good. You can achieve a similar effect by pumping regular pipes through insulated tiles, but that is more expensive in terms of materials. And you might not want insulated tiles everywhere because they don't give the decor bonus. I don't think they have the run speed bonus as well. Yeah, they don't have the run speed bonus. They have a decor penalty. You generally want to use the insulated pipes over the insulated tiles, I would say, if you're trying to move the liquids around. So yeah, I don't think it's a very contentious one. Also, one thing to say is, if you need a heavier duty insulator, you can make ceramic from clay very easily, and that's even better at insulating than igneous rock. Good for almost every application. Then eventually you can make insulation with space materials, and that's like a perfect insulator, but at that point, I never get to that point. I think there's very few builds that require insulation. So making the insulated pipes out of igneous rock and then ceramic is usually good enough for what you need. Lavatories. I'm going to put these in S tier. You do not want your dupes using outhouses for the rest of the game. Like, having a dupe errand to make sure that they don't pee themselves is awful. So set up plumb bathrooms, please. Make it the first thing you do. You do not want your dupes wasting time on outhouses. The only case where I wouldn't use one of these is if I was in a rocket and I was trying to save space, or I just couldn't set up plumbing in the rocket. But it's S tier. I'm not arguing about this. Liquid bridges. I don't think you can't avoid using liquid bridges. They're fine. One thing I didn't point out about the conductive wire bridges, is they do conduct a lot of heat through them, and so do liquid bridges. So, like if they're made out of conductive materials. So if you're building these between insulated tiles, like say you've got a steam chamber, and the bridge is going from the inside to the outside, that will leak heat. So make sure to avoid having your bridges go through insulated tiles. But yeah. Liquid filter. I'm going to put this in D tier. So this building is actually kind of why I did this tier list. Because you're going to see this in the tech tree starting off and you're thinking, great, this is how I separate all my liquids from each other. No, you don't do that. Because it draws 120 watts of power whenever a liquid goes through it, which is going to be a lot. So you're going to be wasting power filtering it like this. There are different ways of filtering liquids. I haven't actually done a video specifically on this, but you can mechanically filter them with like filling pipes with other liquids in a loop. or you can use shutoffs and automation. That's typically what I use, is shutoffs and automation. Have like a pipe element sensor detect what the liquid is, and then have the next tile be the shutoff, and then you can filter out the liquids with the shutoff. And the difference is, the liquid shutoff only uses the power when it's active, like when it's actively filtering. The liquid filter will use it all of the time, even if it's just pure water going through it. So they're okay in a very, if you're only going to use them very quickly, you can justify building them like right next to a pump or something, but do not use them long term. If you have any sort of renewable source of liquid that you're trying to filter, build a different type of filter with automation or mechanically. I'm sure Francis John has done a video showing the different types of filters, or GC fungus. For myself, I just use automation for it. Generally, I don't bother. So this next one, I think, is the liquid meter. I do not have a strong opinion on this. If we go to the wiki quickly, I don't think I've used it very much, but I'm sure it is useful in some cases. Like, you use it to let fixed amount of liquids out. So I haven't done this a lot. I think I imagine you could probably use it for tile generation. I've used conveyor. Yeah, actually no, that's what I've done it with. I've used it to generate natural tiles for like pit wild farms. So I'd send out like conveyor meters with like little blobs of algae, and then I'd use the liquid meters to drop very small amounts of like high temperature liquid onto those algae blobs to cook them, or something like that. So it's pretty niche. Leofar has used it to refuel rockets a specific amount. Making liquid locks, that's true. Yeah, you would use this in a lot of cases where if you were going to use a bottle emptier, you could use a liquid meter as well. It's a bit more complicated, but it does give you that fine control. I guess I'll put it in C tier. I did use it for that wild farm. There are use cases for it, like refueling rockets a specific amount of liquid can be pretty handy. I usually do it just by like having the pipe overflow after that into a tank. Like, I'm mostly ranking it in C tier just because of how rarely I use it. I don't think there's too many cases where you need to use the meter valves, but they are occasionally useful. sorry, Leofar. I get the feeling you find this a lot more useful than I do. This is a very subjective list, by the way. Like, probably the most subjective list I've done. Liquid pipes, you can't avoid them. I mean, you could build everything out of radiant or insulated pipe, but you'd run out of materials probably. Just use liquid pipes, they're good. Move liquids from A to B. And then we've got these 3 different sensors. What the heck do these 3 different sensors do? Right, liquid element sensor. This is good for filtering liquids with shutoffs. So I'd probably put that in A tier. Like, you'd have the liquid pass through the pipe with the liquid element sensor. If you've got, say, brine in your water pipe, that would detect it. It would trigger a shutoff, and you'd move it over there. So I think that's probably one of the most efficient ways of doing that, so I put that in A tier. Germ sensors. I don't really use these very much. I don't think there's many cases where you need to detect the amount of germs in anything, to be honest. It's good that you have the option, but most of the time, you have your germy stuff, and then you either cook it or surround it in chlorine at that point. I don't think I would ever want to set up a system that filtered stuff based on germ count, because I feel like it would fail quite easily, and you'd be better off just killing all the germs at the source and then moving it on. But I haven't really used that. Liquid pipe thermosensor. This is really good. I'm probably just going to put this one in S tier. Like, if you're trying to use thermo aqua tuners or similar to cool liquids down to specific temperatures, you need this to set the specific temperature. And there's so many things in the game where that's relevant. I think that deserves S tier. Like, if you're trying to run like a steam chamber, if you're trying to set the coolant for your base or for plants to certain temperatures, I don't think you can really manage liquid temperatures well without these. So I think S tier is fairly straightforward for that one. I'm gonna try not to linger too much on the little ones, and if there are discussion points, we can discuss it more at the end. But I think that's fairly self-explanatory. Liquid pumps, yeah, these are good. I think I'd actually be tempted to put them in can't avoid. Like, water you can get with a steam turbine. You don't want to pitcher pump everything. Like, you're just going to be using liquid pumps for a lot of things. Bolts clearly could be avoided, yeah. I feel like it is technically possible to do a run without a liquid pump, but I don't think you would ever want to. Yeah, they're just good. The power consumption isn't that bad for how much liquid is moved as well. Like 240 watts for 10 kilograms per second of liquid flow is pretty good. There are certainly much worse power efficiency buildings in the game. We've got liquid shutoffs. I'm going to put these in A tier. In fact, I might even put these in S tier as well. Just because if you're trying to filter... liquids with these automation sensors, you're going to want a shutoff to separate the liquids out. It only draws power when it's shutting off, or when it's filtering through, and it's only 10 watts, so that's hardly any power at all. Definitely worth setting these up over the regular filters. Rip oxygen machines without pumps. Yeah, we'll get to that with the gas section. So liquid valves, I'm not going to discuss these. I'm not going to discuss this too much because there are often cases where you want a specific flow rate of liquid. They're pretty good. This is the way to do it. You don't need to do it all the time. I think I'm just going to put it in A tier. Meter valves are a combination of shutoff and valve. Yeah, I see what you mean, Leofar, but I think most cases I would just want to use a shutoff or a valve instead of a meter. Like, if you're trying to get a constant flow rate, I would rather use a valve than a meter. And if I was trying to filter stuff specifically, I would rather just use a shutoff and not have to automate the meter so much and reset it. But this could be my monkey brain as well. Like, it could be that I literally just don't really conceive of the best use cases for meters. So, yeah, this is subjective. It could be higher. But I generally find these a lot more useful. Oh, yes, that's a good point as well, deep fried peanut butter. The liquid valves, you use those to set up the powerless filters that are mechanical, where you have like a closed loop liquid. I don't tend to do those, but that is how you do it. So yeah, I think A tier is a good place for them. And then we got the liquid vent. We can't really avoid this. Sometimes you need your liquids to exit pipes. What more can I say? They're fine. The overpressure threshold of 1,000 kilograms is pretty good. If you're pumping most liquids, it should just block itself when it gets full. Notable exceptions are like crude oil and petroleum and liquids that store at less than 1,000 kilograms per tile. So just bear that in mind. You will want to set up hydro sensors with these to turn them off in those liquids, otherwise your tanks will overflow if you're just filling them with vents. But most of the time they'll overpressurize on their own, so they're pretty good. We got the little mini thing. The little mini pump. I don't tend to use these too often. They're not very power efficient, but if you're only moving a little amount of liquid and you can't fit a regular pump into space, it's pretty good. Rockets, I would say, are a pretty good use case if you've got liquids moving around in them. Although I can't think of a specific case. You think you put them in C tier, Leofar? Yeah, because they also get damaged quite easily. They're made of plastic. They have a low overheat temperature. Let's have a look. Yeah, here it is. You generally don't want to use them too much, but there are specific use cases. It overheats to 75. I think C tier is fair. It's quite niche. You'd only use it in a case where you can't fit irregular pumps. because the power ratio is really bad. If you could fit a regular pump in there, you would just set up a regular pump and a hydro sensor, so it would only run some of the time. That's what you would do. So yeah, I think C tier is fair. As the wiki says, avoid using it when a standard liquid pump would suffice. And then let's see, outhouses. Can't avoid bad. Yeah, I think that's a good place for that. Like, you don't want your dupes to poop everywhere early on. I mean, they can. You can have your dupes just poop everywhere, like heathens, but I wouldn't recommend it. Because then you're going to be cleaning up a lot of polluted water, there's going to be a lot of polluted oxygen, they're going to pee in the water tank. I wouldn't recommend avoiding outhouses. There's also germs spreading as well. I mean, food poisoning isn't actually that impactful. I mean, it does hinder them early on. Let's actually have a look in the wiki at food poisoning quickly. Like, I'm just wondering how much you could argue that you could just skip outhouses, like, realistically. Because it usually takes you about, sort of, like, 15 to 20 cycles to set up plum bathrooms, is what I usually find it takes me. I wouldn't want to go 15 cycles without outhouses. No outhouses is a valid strategy on the 100 Kelvin map. Yeah, because all the polluted water just freezes. Yeah, that's better. But I'm not counting mods. Shouldn't the bad category be can avoid instead of can't avoid? So the point of the category is you need to build these early on because you don't have an alternative, but you would like right at the start of the game. But you basically usually replace them as soon as you can. So that's what that means. So actually, yeah, I'll change this to can't avoid early. I guess I'll do the same here for good. No, I think there's cases where you just can't avoid using them at all. Like liquid vents, like you need these if you're moving liquids around at all. Like, don't have your pipes burst just to move liquids out of pipes. Yeah, I think that's reasonable because this is going to be a smaller category. Right, let me pitcher pumps. They're pretty good. If you're trying to get just bottles of liquid delivered to bottle emptiers, obviously you need them early on. In fact, I'm going to put them in can't avoid. Like, you want to put this in like a big pool of water early on so you can get your water for your sinks and stuff. The outhouses only require dirt. You also need it to actually do the research with supercomputers. That's the real reason you can't avoid it. Like, you need to deliver water to supercomputers with the bottles. So you always want to set that up. But they're generally quite useful. Yeah, exactly. They're literally number one building in the first cycle. Yeah, you have to build them. They're also quite useful if you're trying to just move liquids around for liquid locks. Like, if you set up an oil tank or a petroleum tank, you put a pitcher pump in it, you can just deliver those liquids with bottles to the bottle emptiers and do that. And it's, depending on the distances, it can be quicker for like one-off cases than pumps. So yeah, pretty useful. I won't dwell on them too long because you have to use them early game. And yeah, super coolant. You need to deliver petroleum to the molecular forge as bottles. I wouldn't say you need super coolant to play the game, but it's another case where you can't do it without pitcher pumps. And yeah, the recommendation is if you put them in hot liquids, make them out of ceramic. Yeah. Common sense. Yeah, just got there. Yeah, if you're putting this in like hot oil or something, definitely make it out of ceramic. And then we've got radiant pipes. These are also S tier. If you're trying to conduct heat away from your liquids into an area, it's the best way of doing it. Metals in general are very conductive. Even the least conductive refined metals you can build these out of are very good. It does take refined metal to make, which can be a bit of a pain early on, but it's only like 25 per segment, I believe. It's not a lot of refined metal at all, so it's always worth building if you're trying to Oh, it's 50 kilograms. Yeah, there we go. And all of these metals have pretty good thermal conductivity. Even lead is pretty good, even though it's the worst. Very good at exchanging heat. And the pipe itself also doubles the thermal conductivity of the building material. So that's worth bearing in mind as well. The insulated pipe has a similar effect on insulating the liquid. It makes the material itself more efficient. So yeah, these are S tiers for controlling those temperatures. Showers. I'm going to put showers as A. It's very easy early game morale. You're setting up plumb bathrooms anyways, so it's very easy to set up a shower right next to those, hook it up to the same pipes. The morale is good. You could use it to clean germs off of dupes during downtime as well. Yeah, it's just easy morale. Very easy. So I put that in A tier. Then we've got the rocket ports for the liquids. I don't really have a strong opinion on these. I haven't used these too much. So I'm going to leave those for now. If anyone has any opinions in chat, we can move this somewhere. But I haven't done a lot of rocket-related stuff with these. But that's because I haven't got that far, not because I don't think they're good. Wall toilets. I'm going to put these in... I'm going to put these in B tier. Or in C tier. They're pretty niche. You obviously just use them with rockets. Like, you can build them in your base, but you don't just want to dump polluted water out of your base in general. You want to recycle it. So don't build these in your regular base. Only build them in rockets, where you want to just dump the water out of the rocket into space. But at the same time, I've definitely built rockets where I don't use wall toilets. Sometimes you want to have a plumb bathroom to get the morale, and yeah, you want the plumb bathroom to get the morale, and you can keep the water there and dump it at the other place to recycle it. So I think it's pretty niche, but obviously very useful in general for rockets. I don't know, C tier or B tier? I think you build them in rockets more often than not, so I think I put it in B tier, but just don't build them in your base. And then I believe this is all the gas stuff now, so that's the whole liquid section done. Showers are good with skill stacking and a polluted water source. Yep, very good for early morale. I think that's everything then in the comments. Just think with the existing toilets. No, I don't think so, because you wouldn't use them in the base. They're specifically for rockets, so I wouldn't put them super high up. I mean, your dupes do need to go to the toilet in the rockets, and if they do, then they're good for that. But you wouldn't generally use them, so I don't think I want to put them at the same tier as the other toilets. And outhouses suck. Okay, gases. I'm gonna put the gas meter in no strong opinion. I haven't found any cases where I needed to move specific amounts of gas. I mean, you could argue for filling a Draco ranch, you only want a certain amount of hydrogen in it. So that could be that. Steam, yeah. So if you're filling a steam rocket, you can use it for that. That's certainly a use case. I'll leave this here for now, and I'll let Leofard talk more about it, because I think Leofard uses these more. Gas pipes. You can't avoid these, I don't think. Like, come on. The main reason I say you can't avoid these is because you're going to want to pump oxygen either to Atmo suits or into rockets or just out of your electrolyzers or somewhere. I think the main reason you can't avoid them is Atmo suits. You're going to want Atmo suits eventually. You're not going to make the whole asteroid habitable. There are going to be parts you can't go in. So you are going to need to fill up oxygen masks and Atmo suits. Yeah, gas pipes are fine. We have the gas element sensor. Yeah, exactly. Even oxygen masks require them. You need gas pipes. Gas element sensor. Let's see. It's this one here. I would put it in the same place as the liquid one. You want to filter gases, doing it with shutoffs is very efficient. This lets you do that. If you're just trying to take all your waste gases in the base and put them in a random gas reservoir, that's how you do it. It's pretty good. It's how you do it. Generally, I find that with electrolyzer builds and even the rusty oxidizer builds to a degree, where you know what the gases are coming in and out, you can build those systems mechanically to avoid having to use them. But for general uses outside of that, they're still very good. So Leofar thinks gas meter valves or only steam that regulate flow gas pipes that shut off is enough. Yeah. I think I'm going to put it in C tier with the liquid one. I think it's quite niche. I do use steam rockets a lot, and I have used this for steam rockets. So to me, they have about the same amount of value, but I think we disagree on that, Leofar. I'm not going to put it in D because it's not outright bad. I'm only putting buildings in D that I just wouldn't recommend using. Like, the bunker stuff is only here because the regolith asteroid is the literal only use case I see for them. And that's not going to be relevant most of the time. Germ sensor, I'm going to, for gases, I'm going to put that in D. You shouldn't be filtering stuff based on germs. You should just be removing the germs before you move stuff. And then we have the gas element sensor. Again, this goes up here. Oh no, this isn't the gas element sensor. Oh, I got these confused, haven't I? Oh, god damn it. Gas thermosensor. Yeah. So, the thing about this is, obviously you need it to control what temperatures gases are coming out of. That's definitely not as common as for liquids, but I still think you put it in S tier, because... what builds do you use gas thermosensors on? Moving steam around, I imagine. Natural gas for sour gas boilers and stuff, maybe. It's not immediately coming to mind. I don't think it's as relevant as liquids, because most of the time, most elements are just super hot as gases. I guess you could use it for oxygen, but yeah, you would use it for oxygen, but in most cases I've got the liquid, I've got the coolant sensor on the liquid. The one case I definitely use these is for thermoregulator loops. So for like the freezer, you would use that to make sure the gas is at the right temperature. Yeah, deep fried peanut butter's got it. I think I'd still put it in S. It's less frequently used, but like when you do need it, you do need it. And yeah, I think I'll leave it there. I think I'm going to group those sensors together, to be honest. The small sour gas boilers use them for thermoregulators. Yeah, exactly. I think the main use case for this is when you're using thermoregulators. So you could argue putting it down to A, because you don't generally use them as much as thermo aquatuners, because they're not as power efficient, and we'll get to that later. I think A tier is a good place for that. They're definitely more niche. There's less cases where you want to use it, and oftentimes you're better off controlling a liquid temperature than using gas, than controlling the gas temperature. But there are cases where you can't avoid it, and this is when you use it. Gas pumps. Yeah, this is can't avoid. I'm not really going to argue with this. You're going to want to pump oxygen somewhere. Unless, I mean, the funny thing is, now with the recent updates, you can technically use, like, smog slugs to breathe non-breathable gases. But then you can't get oxygen in the pipes without a pump. So, yeah, you can't avoid the pumps. But yes, the one thing I would say about gas pumps is the flow rate is awful. It's 500 grams per second per pump, and it's still 240 watts per pump. So what I would say is, if you ever have a chance to move a liquid instead of a gas, you should move the liquid, because the liquid pump is so much more efficient. Like, to illustrate what I mean, I had a room where I had a cool steam vent and an iron volcano. and I was trying to move the steam over to the iron volcano so that it would heat up. And instead of and I was trying to do that so I could heat up the steam so that it could go into steam turbines and then carry it out of the room that way. So the options I had were, I could have heated it up using an external heat source, which I didn't want to do. I could have used gas pumps to move all of the steam over to the volcano, but it would have been like 4 gas pumps running flat out. It would have been a load of power. Or I could literally run a thermo aqua tuner and condense the steam, turn it into a liquid, and have that liquid flow over to the volcano. And it was actually cheaper from a power perspective to use the thermo aqua tuner to cool down the steam than to move it with gas pumps. Like, gas pumps are really bad at what they do, but you just can't avoid using them for stuff like oxygen. And like when you've got a SPOM, you want to move the hydrogen into the hydrogen power plants. They're really good for that. So you can't avoid using them, but they're definitely not as good at what they do as liquid pumps. But yeah, this is subjective, and it's a little bit of a semantic issue. Gas shutoffs, I really like these. I'm going to put these shutoffs with the liquid shutoffs. Very useful for just controlling gas filtration without having to use the actual gas filters. Gas valves. I put these right next to liquid valves. The entire can't avoid good pro looks like a series of challenges. I mean, okay, you literally can't avoid using the manual generator. I mean, you could if there was a map with plug slugs, and you could generate the power for your initial research off of plug slugs. Oh, god damn it! I think you're right. I think you could technically, if you're doing a challenge run, avoid using all of these, but it would be awful. I'm going to change this to usually. There you go. Gas vents. You need these as well. Gas got to come out of places. The high pressure gas vent. So these are optional. And I'm going to put these in A tier. Like, if you're trying to pressurize a room, you have 2 options. You can use a high pressure gas vent, which takes a little bit of plastic and it will go up to 20 kilograms per tile, which is usually good enough for what you need. Or you can have less than 2 kilograms of liquid in front of a gas vent, and then that will pressurize indefinitely so long as the liquid doesn't get displaced. So the reason I'm sticking it in A is because most of the time, if you're not making an infinite storage, it is just convenient just to be able to stick one of these wherever you want and not have to worry about liquids getting evaporated. But you certainly don't need them. They're more of a nice to have. Like, you can set up most systems in the game without using them, but they do make certain systems easy to use. Yeah, I guess B would be a good place for them then. I think that actually checks out. Insulated gas pipes. I'm going to stick these with the liquid pipes. I think most of what I've said, the liquids applies to gases. If you want to control the temperature and you don't want to surround it with insulated tile, you use an insulated gas pipe. Although the one thing I would say is, because gas is so little mass, like, you can't necessarily rely on just making a pipe insulated to avoid the gas changing temperature. Like, if you're pumping steam out of a room a long distance in an insulated pipe, gas pipe, it's gonna exchange heat more quickly than a liquid would, and it can condense in the pipe quite a lot. So you'd often find yourself making more ceramic insulated gas pipes than you would insulated liquid pipes. You'd use insulated liquid pipes for the glass forge, like when it's coming out as glass and you want to drop it somewhere. But yeah, I don't think insulated gas pipes are as good at what they do as insulated liquid pipes. We have the miniature gas pump. I'm definitely going to put this above the miniature liquid pump. I'm going to put this... I think I'm still going to put it in C tier. It is quite niche, but what I like to do is I like to fit this on rockets to pump the CO2 out, and there's not room to put a regular gas pump. Like, if there's cases where there's not room to put a regular gas pump, you would use this. The power efficiency is lower than a normal gas pump, so yeah, the power efficiency of a regular gas pump is really bad. So it's even worse for a miniature gas pump. But there are cases where there's just a tiny little bit of gas that you just need to get out of a room, and you don't have room for a normal gas pump, and it is useful then, but it's still fairly niche. I'm not going to dwell on it too much. Radiant gas pipes, again, S tier. More useful for thermoregulator loops than anything else, I find. When you're trying to cool stuff with hydrogen or natural gas in a pipe. Still pretty good at what you need to do. Generally, try and use liquids where you can, because they have more like heat capacity. Like, there's just more mass to move the heat around. And then I don't really have a strong opinion on the rocket fittings, so we'll just leave these here for now. Let's see. The canister emptier. I do find this useful for filling up rooms with gases where I don't need like a permanent vent and a pump. Like, I'm just trying to fill up a Drecker Ranch. I'll put a canister emptier in there, pump some hydrogen from somewhere, some random pocket on the map, and then just deliver the bottles to a Drecker Ranch. It's pretty convenient. Generally, don't use them as much as the bottle emptiers. I think I put them in C tier as well. Generally, you try and pump gases around instead, but it's not awful. The main thing is you've got to put the gas from a pipe into a canister filler first. It's not like a pitcher pump. There's no gas equivalent of a pitcher pump where a dupe stands there and just squeezes the gas out of the air. So I think that actually makes the canister emptier significantly worse than the bottle emptier. You're only going to use it for niche circumstances, like filling individual rooms once, and then just forget about it. And then you got the canister filler. I think I put this in C tier as well. The main thing I use this for is hooking it up to carbon dioxide pipes and then taking it to the soda fountain so the dupes can have their soda, and there's no alternative for that. You have to deliver canisters of CO2 to those things. You would use it to deliver hydrogen to Drecker Ranches using the canister emptier. I think they just belong together, to be honest. Gas bridges, you can't really avoid these. The gas filter, I'm gonna put this in D tier as well. You should generally avoid using these. If you're using this to filter all of your oxygen throughout the whole game, you're wasting a lot of power. You're already wasting power on the gas pumps. If you're trying to filter the gases out of an electrolyzer, this can actually make the difference between whether you have enough power to run your system off just the hydrogen, or whether it consumes more power than it uses. So the only case where you'd use one of these is really early on, when you don't have a choice. You need to get some clean oxygen into your oxygen masks to do something, and then as soon as you can, you would either just use deodorizers or something else to make an area where it's only clean oxygen, you don't need to filter it and power the filter, or you would set up an automated filter. You're going to hear that a lot tonight. Yeah, E tier for that. And then that's it on the gases front. So let's look at the comments quickly. What are fridges doing in the same tier as airborne critter traps? I don't like fridges. I generally just either make cold rooms or set up freezers. You do need fridges for some things, but I don't like them. This list, more than anything, this list is a list of how much I like certain buildings and how much I use them. Like, I would say that. Can't think of a time when you used airborne critter traps or something good results from it. You don't decide which critter takes the bait. Dupes might not have time to do anything before the critter flies away. 1,000 times easier to move eggs or wrangle with drop off. Moving eggs is definitely more efficient. Wrangle with drop off most of the time is good. There have been occasional cases where it's been quicker for me to just set up a critter bait. And I'm just talking from my own experience. It's been quicker to do that than to move an egg. Like, some of the flying critters don't reproduce as often, so that's also true. Compared to the Pacus, which reproduce a lot of the time. But yeah, thanks for dropping by, Neo. I've enjoyed your company. And this will go on YouTube, obviously, so feel free to leave a comment there if you want. Yeah, powered filters are new traps because of how expensive they are. Exactly. They are the biggest trap in the game, and that's why I made this video, pretty much. Fridge is good. Even powered fridge in O2 will get you a long way. Yeah, it's not bad. A freshener spice gives you a similar effect. The power draw of the fridge isn't too bad. Putting the fridge in CO2 is okay. It's a transitionary solution. You'd replace it eventually. So I think C tier is a good spot for it. Right, let's move on to refinery. So we have the algae distiller. I think this is a fairly niche building. So it takes slime and it turns it into 1/3 algae and 2/3 polluted water. Now that's not bad. Getting water out of slime is pretty good for feeding to plants and things. And obviously the algae can turn into more oxygen. So there are cases where you're going to want to use this. You want to consume slime anyways. So putting it in here is better than just leaving it in a storage box to do nothing. You don't really want it off-gassing. And yeah, producing the water is good. You can use them for portable water sources for metal refineries. I didn't actually think of that. That is actually pretty clever. You can just deliver the slime and then have an algae distiller next to it. And then get water somewhere. Yeah, I like that idea. The only reason I don't really want to tier it higher is because you don't get a huge amount of slime. And the slime is fairly finite. The only way to get renewable slime is puffs from polluted oxygen. And the amount of polluted oxygen you're going to have is fairly limited. You might have some geysers. You can off-gas polluted water, but then the water's just turning into oxygen anyways. And then you're just turning that slime back into algae and more water for more oxygen. So I don't think there's any point doing that with puffs. But if you have a lot of slime on the map, definitely, there are worse things you can do with it than turn it into algae and polluted water. So I think C tier is a pretty good place for it. Compost. So this turns polluted dirt into dirt. It produces heat. The dupe has to go flip it. So I don't really like these. Let's actually go have a look at it on the list. I very, very occasionally tend to build these. There's the actual throughput of the compost is not a lot. It's 100 grams per second. It produces a fairly large amount of heat in the dirt. The dupe has to constantly come and flip it. Generally, I find if you're struggling for dirt, this isn't going to solve your problem. I mean, if you're on a swampy map and it's full of polluted dirt from the map, then you can flip it and get regular dirt. That makes sense. But I don't know. Because you need dirt for mere woods. If you want to do that, you need dirt for research. Yeah, quite essential on the Quagmire map where dirt doesn't actually generate much. But yeah, my experience with that Quagmirus, with that Squelchy, I did a playthrough on a Squelchy asteroid. I generally found there was enough regular dirt that I didn't need to compost. And really, it's just the fact that someone needs to come flip it. It's just annoying. Like, if long term you want to turn polluted dirt into regular dirt, just put it in a boiler. You have a volcano erupting somewhere, just dump your polluted dirt in there, and turn it into regular dirt. Late game. Like, you can use it to compost biological waste that you don't want as well. Like, certain food and seeds. You don't need them. Managing heat and food poisoning germs is a little annoying with them early in game. Yeah, that's true as well. Because it doesn't kill the germs, does it? Because the dirt comes out at 75 degrees. It doesn't necessarily kill all of the germs from polluted dirt in the refinement process. So that can be annoying. I don't think I put it so far as D tier, but I wouldn't generally use them. I would rather just put the polluted dirt in a storage bin and either feed... In fact, I think I am actually going to put it in D tier. I think most of the time it's the worst decision to build a compost than not. Because early on, if you've got the polluted dirt, you would either put it in a storage bin underwater so it doesn't off-gas, and then either feed it to sage hatches eventually and turn it into coal, or put it in a boiler, and you will have a boiler somewhere, and get your dirt that way. And I haven't come across a case where I've needed to turn the polluted dirt into dirt to survive. Because if we're using it for mealwoods, you usually end up with better options for food than mealwoods. You shouldn't be relying on compost dirt for mealwoods to survive. You should either have enough dirt to grow mealwoods for a while and then move on to other food sources, or if you don't have enough dirt, you just shouldn't grow mealwoods. You should just do something else, like ranch critters right away. Drecos, that sort of thing. Dreco balm lily could be useful in those cases where you don't have hatches. I think I'm going to keep it in D tier. Good grief, there's still so many of these icons. I'm going to have to speed up. Desalinator. I'm going to put this in B tier. Like, if you've got cold salt water, make sure it's above freezing. And once it is, desalinating it with one of these is okay. It takes a lot of power, but if you're dealing with cold saltwater sources, it is more... I think it's generally more efficient to desalinate it than try and boil it and then cool it down again. If you've got hot saltwater, I wouldn't generally recommend desalinating it. I would just boil it and then condense it and then just take the water. And then you're not worrying about powering this thing because it's 480 watts. But if you've got cold sources, it's okay. And if you're like dealing with saltwater on the map from like ocean biomes, that's a pretty good use case for it because it's room temperature. You don't want to boil it if you don't have to, but just be aware it consumes a lot of power. Ethanol distillers. These are obviously really good for converting lumber into ethanol and then feeding through petroleum generators. So I think it makes sense to tier them with petroleum generators. You'd use them together. You could also use it to get ethanol for nosh beans and that sort of thing. Fairly niche food sources. If you have polluted water to feed trees, then turn those trees into ethanol and then feed plants. You could just use that polluted water to feed like bog buckets or something, depending on what you've got going on. But I think you'd mostly use this for feeding the petroleum generators and then feeding those specific plants. So I think it makes sense to tier them together. Just don't put these in the base right next to the trees because they produce a lot of heat and a lot of CO2. Fertilizer synthesizer. I like this a lot. I'm going to put it in A tier actually. So you want fertilizer. There's not a huge amount of fertilizer on the map, and in certain cases, like if you're growing like thimbleweeds and you want to save on polluted water, you use fertilizer instead, double the output of the thimbleweeds, get twice as much reed fiber for the same amount of water. And what I tend to do is I tend to put this in the room where I process all the natural gas stuff, because it produces natural gas as a byproduct. Stick it in the same room that you manage your natural gas vent in. Sorry. Let's actually have a look at the wiki as well. Yeah, you put dirt in, phosphorite in, polluted water, then you get fertilizer out. So you get a lot of fertilizer as well. You don't actually need to run it too much, it doesn't consume that much dirt. You can get a lot of extra efficiency on your plants with it, which can, in the long run, save you a lot of water. So I like them a lot. Fertilizer synthesizers are great, especially with sleets from ice biomes, which drop time of harvest from 18 to 9 cycles. That's also very true. It speeds up how quickly plants grow. So with plants that take a long time to grow, like bog buckets, it can make the difference between your food going off between harvests or not early game. Generally, if I have a natural gas geyser and I need to use it early on, I set one of these up pretty quickly in the same room. The natural gas is a bit of a pain to deal with, but it's also a low enough amount. You could seal it in a room with a liquid lock, and it's not too bad. You could build this in just a cubby somewhere and not worry about it, and the benefits are worth it. So I think, to be honest, I should probably build these more often. I should have probably built one on my current playthrough. Because I've got thimble reeds I need to fertilize. Synthesizers are also a way to produce dirt. How so? So obviously it consumes dirt to produce the fertilizer. Do you boil the fertilizer and then get the dirt out of that? Is that how that works? The only downside is dupe labor. I don't think it needs dupe labor. You can set up auto sweepers if you want to. I mean, I generally don't, so I imagine it is dupe labor to deliver the ingredients most of the time. But yeah, I like it. Glass forge. So... Oh, yeah, using up the fertilizer, that's true. You can't... Yeah, it needs skill, you can't use it for auto-sweeping. Yeah, applying the micronutrient fertilizer, producing it from the farm station, it does take time. That is true. So the glass forge. I'm not really sure where to put this, because solar panels are obviously really good. When it comes down to it, this is very inefficient at making glass. You get a quarter of the sand out of turned into glass. And it's super hot. You can deal with the heat fairly well. You can just drop it in some water. Not enough glass is produced. It's a huge amount of heat. But it will burst out of pipes if you're not careful. Don't put it in the middle of your base. And you do need it to make solar panels early on, which are really good. Also used for window tiles and things. Super late game. If you want a lot of glass, you could make a machine to heat up the sand to the temperature and it would be a lot more efficient, but it would also be a lot of effort. So I think I'm going to put the glass forge in A tier. Like, there are technically alternatives to making glass, but you wouldn't usually use them. And it's quite inefficient, but it's probably the best way of doing it normally. Because otherwise you're going to be like, what, putting sand next to a metal volcano early on? Or doing some other shenanigans? I don't really want to put it in S tier, because, like, it is quite a niche building. But by the same logic, I should move the solar panel to A tier, because you need to make glass to make it to work. But... I think I will do that. I think I'll move the solar panel to A tier. Because making the glass is annoying, and you're not going to do it immediately. You get most of your glass from points of interest in the printing pod. Yeah, that's true. I mean, once you make your first lot of glass, you do get some of the printing pod, but solar panels also cost a lot of glass, how much power they produce. So you are going to find a point in the game where you're just waiting to make glass for solar panels. So I think it makes sense to move the solar panels to A tier. Glass forges have a few strategies for making natural tiles, but they're kind of tedious compared to the door trick. For me, I don't like solar panels. Too much space of 380 watts for like a few seconds. Yeah, I think moving them down to A tier is fair enough, because they are relatively inefficient. It's free, but it's a lot of effort for what you get. Like, early on, you're better off setting up like your hydrogen generators for your electrolyzer and stuff. Natural gas generator is also probably better early on. Yeah, I think that's fair. So let's see. The kiln. I'm actually going to put the kiln in S tier. So the reason I'm putting the kiln in S tier is because you're using it for like two things mostly. You're using it to make refined carbon, and you're using it to make ceramic. Yeah, those are literally the two recipes. In terms of refined carbon, it's 80% efficiency. You're not generally going to cook coal into refined carbon yourself, because the issue with that is you still need to mine the refined carbon if you cook it a lot of the time. And then you're going to get less efficiency than from the kiln. So you're better off just making it with the kiln most of the time. It's dead easy. And then with ceramic, like turning the clay into ceramic, again, like you don't generally want to try and do the state change. Like you don't want to form tiles and then have to robo-mine it. There may be ways to get it to state change without turning into a tile, but I haven't tried it and I don't think it would ever be worth it. The efficiency on the kiln is good enough that you should just use it instead of setting up big complicated machines for this. Because you want both of these materials early on. You want refined carbon for steel production, and you want ceramic for insulated materials, mostly for building like metal refineries and bottle emptiers and stuff in hot rooms. That's what I mostly use ceramic for. But I think the kiln is just the best way of doing it. And the other thing is, it's a pretty good source of heat. It's 20 kDTUs, and all it takes is a dupe or an auto sweeper to put stuff in it. It doesn't take any power to run. You just need to keep feeding it coal, so you can set up auto sweepers and stuff and just have it run. If you want to just keep the temperature up in a room, you can just put kilns in there and feed them coal every now and then and turn it into refined carbon. Or refine your ceramic while you've got spare clay. If you have deodorizers, you can automate it and just get a lot of consistent heat from just producing ceramic. So yeah, I really like kilns. I would usually like if like space heaters, I'm going to get onto in a minute, but like if you were going to build a space heater in a spot, I would usually just set up a kiln there and just refine coal or refine clay. I guess it depends on how much clay you have access to, but I'll talk about space heaters in a minute. Renewable sand cycle is possible via them. Yeah, I guess because deodorizers turn sand into clay, and then you can turn that clay into ceramic, and then back into sand. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. I think S tier is a good spot for kiln. You generally wouldn't not use it. Metal refinery is S tier as well. So not only do you need it to make steel, you can't avoid, like if you want steel and the great overheat temperature it provides, you need to have a metal refinery, end of. It's also very convenient for turning metal ores into refined metals. The rock crusher is good early game, but it's inefficient. The metal refinery is a lot more efficient. The power is a bit cumbersome early on, but once you've got conductive wires, like 1.2 kilowatts is fine on a conductive wire. The actual second benefit of the metal refinery is heat, because it has a liquid pipe that ejects coolant, and it heats the coolant up based on what metal recipe you're doing. So if you want heat in an area, like to boil salt water, I usually just like to set up metal refineries, because you want to refine the metal anyways to build stuff and to make steel, and the waste heat you can put to boil something useful. It's just like the downside of the building can be turned into a big upside. Like I had a run where on cycle 40 I used a metal refinery to set up a Dreco ranch because there wasn't any food on the map other than like Drecos and balm lilies and pinch of peppers and stuff. So what I actually did was I set up the metal refinery, put polluted water in it. Once the polluted water was like about 80 degrees, I sent it to the pinch of peppers, and the Drecos just ate the pinch of peppers. And that's how I got food. And then obviously I started branching Drecos off of that. And I was producing steel the whole time at cycle 40. Like, metal refineries are bonkers, and if you can use them right and you can figure out how to build them early on, they can save runs building them. Like, rushing and building them. So definitely S tier. You need refined metals, and the waste heat is really good. Molecular Forge. I'm just going to put this in... I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion on this. I haven't used it a lot. You generally don't need space materials that much. Most of the late game stuff you can do, you don't need space materials for it. Thermium is probably the only exception, but I'm going to be honest, I don't have any experience with Thermium. I haven't gotten that far. I think I made it once in the base game, so I'm not going to give you an opinion on this. I feel it would be disingenuous. It's taller than 4 tiles, which is very annoying. Like, you've got to fit it in an extra large room, but it's fine. You use it to make supercoolant. I have used it to make supercoolant in the base game. Obviously, you need it to make supercoolant. That's how you get the liquid hydrogen, the liquid oxygen stuff for those endgame rockets. It's the reason why your refinery areas are 5 tiles high. Yeah. I had a 5-tile high refinery for another reason. It was because I had loads of metal refineries next to each other, and I wanted to have auto sweepers above them. So I think that's actually a good height in general. But it is annoying because the dupes obviously can't reach the top without ladders. So yeah, I don't know where to tier it. I'm willing to take suggestions for that one. Let's see, oil refinery. It's kind of a trap and it's kind of not. Like, I'm gonna put this in B tier. Like, yes, when you're refining oil into petroleum, like 10 kilograms per second of oil turns into 5 kilograms per second of petroleum and a little bit of natural gas. So you're losing half the oil. It won't let you recycle water like a petroleum boiler would, but you're not going to set up a petroleum boiler early on. It lets you get your initial lot of petroleum for your rocket, for like your initial plastic production if you don't have Drecos. And just looking at it from a pure power point of view, 5 kilograms of petroleum and 90 grams of... Or how many grams of natural gas is it? Is it 90? Yeah, it is. It's 1 natural gas generator's worth of natural gas. It's 2.8 kilowatts of power from this, as opposed to 4 kilowatts of power if you're using a petroleum boiler and using it for power. It's not that bad. It does require dupe operation, which is annoying. This song is actually a little bit louder than the others, so I'm going to turn it down for a minute. It's a little bit annoying that dupes need to use it, but it's still manageable. And I think it's one of the cases where it's inefficient, but it's worth doing early on, just to get started. So I think I'm going to put it in B tier. Oxalite refinery. I think I'm going to put this in B tier as well. Like, when you're managing your rockets, what I like to do is drop oxalite in them and just let it off gas. And you either make it with an oxalite refinery, if you have gold, if you have refined gold, or gold amalgam that you can process. Either gold amalgam you can process on the map, or gold from a metal volcano. You can use a little bit of that to turn oxygen into oxalite. It takes a lot of power, but it's pretty convenient. The alternative is just pumping gas oxygen into your rockets, which is also a thing you can do. Like, it's not too convenient, but oxalite refineries are a hassle, and you don't always have access to gold. You can puff branch as well. You can dense puff branch if you are alright breeding the puffs, and then get your oxalite that way. But that's probably more fiddly than using the oxalite refinery. So I'll put it in B tier as well. Like, it's fiddly, but like, it's about as fiddly as the alternatives. Polymer press. I think I put this in B tier as well. So generally with my plastic, I like to get most of it through Drecos. Like, early on. Sorry, here you go. Like, early on, just getting a Dreco, getting a glossy Dreco from that by having it eat meal wood, and just breeding them is pretty easy for plastic production. But having a lot of Dreco ranches can be a pain. And if you want a massive amount of plastic production for a massive amount of petroleum, you're better off using polymer presses. If you put them in an industrial sauna, the steam coming off it is not a problem. And then the carbon dioxide is very minimal as well, and that's pumped or piped, so you can just pipe that to a canister filler or into space. You do need to make sure that the sauna they're in isn't so hot that the plastic melts, but at the same time, sometimes you do want plastic to melt into naphtha. You can set one of these up in a hot area and have the plastic immediately melt out of it into naphtha, and then that is a very viscous liquid that you can use for liquid locks. It's not as good as visco gel, but it's pretty good. You can get like 30-40 kilograms per tile. I know they've added the conduction panels to the game. I'm not even sure they're on this list, actually. I'm not sure the wiki has been updated regarding them. Maybe it has. But I'm not going to include them here because I haven't used them. I don't even know how they work, really, if I'm being honest. So they're not going to be on the list. But naphtha's pretty good. This is how you make naphtha. I mean, the alternative is building plastic temperature plates in hot rooms, which is annoying. I think it's B tier. Like, for low throughput, glossy Drecos are probably better, but for high throughput with lots of oil, lots of petroleum, I think you're better off using the polymer presses to save frames, save dupe labor. It's okay. Rock Crusher. You need this to make lime, which you need for steel. It's very useful early game just to get that initial lot of refined metal you need to do stuff. If you can't find a load of lead from a nearby oil biome, if you're not playing on Badlands, you don't have a load of refined iron around, getting the refined metal early on is good. There is a little bit of refined metal on most maps. There's usually lead surrounding a uranium geode on most maps, but sometimes it's not too close to where you actually spawn. So I wouldn't rely on that lead for building your initial stuff, like your initial automation. So yeah, rock crushers are pretty good. They generate a little bit of heat, but it's not too bad. You can have it in your base for a while before it causes problems. Dupes use it. They like to punch the little thing. Standing here, they realize it's okay. And you need it to make lime. You can also convert salt to sand. That's very true. You want table salt for the increased morale sometimes, and you do ultimately need sand. And you get salt from saltwater geysers, so being able to turn salt into sand is very good. In fact, I'm actually going to put this in S tier. Like, there's things that you just can't do without it, like lime production, renewable sand. Like, don't use it to refine metals late game. Early game, you can use it for that, but late game, you want to use it to get sand, you want to use it to get lime. But it is good. And the heat production is low enough, you can just have it in your base if you're not using it that much, and eventually move it to an industrial sauna. Or just put if you cool the oxygen in your base, I usually find it's good enough for one rock crusher. It's not too much heat. It's like, let's see, 16 kDTUs. It's not great, but it's manageable. Actually, it's even less power than I thought. It's only 240 watts. Yeah, it's not a lot of power at all. Yeah, I think S tier is a pretty good spot for that. It's just not worth not using them. Water sieve. I'm just going to put this in S tier just because it makes managing early game bathrooms a lot easier. Like, being able to turn sand into polluted dirt and swap polluted water back to water is instrumental in recycling water from bathrooms, from carbon skimmers. Even just filtering polluted water vents with the water sieve is often worth it just because they produce so much water. It's a powerless filter. Yeah, that's very true. Like, this is the other thing about the desalinator and the water sieve, is that if you send water through it, it doesn't worry about whether it's salt water or polluted. It's fine. Like, let me just double check that on the wiki. I don't want to be spreading misinformation. But yeah, the desalinator passes water and polluted water without being damaged, and I'm pretty sure the water sieve passes salt water without being damaged. Yeah, it's not damaged by clean water, salt water, or brine. So you could literally just have a waste, like a water pump, in a jungle juice of like water, salt water, brine, polluted water, and run it through a water sieve and a desalinator in series, and it will be fine. It doesn't need filtering. But yeah, I just like the water sieve because it lets you set up a closed bathroom early on, like where it net produces water. You don't have to worry about the bathrooms ever running out of water, and all the excess polluted water can just go into a plant or can be filtered into excess water and then put in another plant. And it basically just lets you not worry about bathrooms after the early game, because it will all just run itself on its own closed loop, and you don't have to worry about dupes peeing themselves. And that alone, I think, makes it S tier. You can similarly auto sweep all the stuff in and out, like you can just drop all the sand off from the rock crusher. Power usage is very minimal, minus 120. It's just minus 120 watts. The output heat is minimal. Yeah, it's great. Use water sieves, use them early. Then we've got the diamond press. I haven't used this yet, but I mean, obviously, if you're trying to get diamond for drill cones, it is a way of doing that. I mean, getting rad bolts to it could be probably inconvenient, but I don't think you really have that much of an alternative. So I'm just going to put it in no strong opinion. I haven't used it. It does make coal more valuable, that's very true. So more of a reason to have all your hatches eat all of your rock, because you can then turn it into diamond and then mine space point of interests to get the other resources you want with your rockets. So I imagine it's very useful late game. So I'm willing to take suggestions on what tier to put it in, but I don't have an opinion on it myself. Like, I imagine it'd probably be pretty good. Sludge press, I'm going to put this in A tier. Reason is, on swampy maps... Actually, I'm going to put it in B tier. It's not quite... I don't know where to put this, because it's quite niche. There's only certain maps where you end up with mud, like the squelchy ones. But being able to get the dirt and water out of that is very useful. And it does take a dupe to use it, but it's not a lot of power. It's 120 watts. The dirt and the water are both useful. And the alternative is boiling the mud, which can be annoying. Or, well, it's more annoying early on. There are probably circumstances where you would want to process the mud, but the funny thing about that map is there's a lot of polluted water on the map already. There's a lot of dirt on the map already. I think I'm in agreement with you, Deep Fried Peanut Butt, in that it's generally not instrumental to your survival to process mud with a sludge press. And late game, if you're ranching a lot of grubs and getting mud from them, you're going to want to boil that so your dupes aren't jumping up and down on sludge presses for their water. So I think C tier makes sense. It's pretty niche. There is a low amount of dirt and swamp maps, that's true. But I still think it kind of falls in the camp of, if you're running out of dirt, find alternatives to using large amounts of dirt. Because on swamp maps, you have bog buckets and they just take polluted water. And you have lots of polluted water. There'll be a polluted water vent somewhere. On the flipped asteroid, if you get to the sulfur geyser, you can make mud into renewable water, but it's a very small amount for the effort. Yeah, it's basically what I'm talking about. You process sulfur geysers into dirt and water using either sludge presses or boiling it. But consider, if you're getting out of sulfur geysers, the sulfur is already hot. You can use the sulfur to heat a steam chamber and boil the mud in that chamber instead of having your dupes jump up and down on a sludge press. So it's useful early game if you run out of dirt, but I think C tier is a good place for it. You do need dirt for research, that's true. So generally, my experience was there was enough dirt on the map that I saved it for research and used other food sources and stuff to avoid consuming it for anything else. And I didn't need to lean on the sludge press too much. Like, I had one that I used if the dupes had nothing better to do, but I never depended on it. So I think that's where I put that. So that's all the refinement buildings. So this is good. The list is spreading out a bit more. It's not everything in A tier like I thought it was going to be. So, yeah. Let's move on to the medicine stuff. you're playing a flip game right now and there's a deceptive amount of water stored in the tundra biomes. That's very true. That's very true. There's a lot of water on the map, on a lot of maps, if you know how to process it. Right. I like the apothecaries. They're not mandatory, but on the spaced out, on the one dupe per planet challenge, very useful for making rad pills, so my dupes could go out into the radiated areas and not die. Like, very useful for that. Also useful to make allergy medication and stuff. Let's just go confirm all the recipes. I don't use it too often, but situations do come up and it's worth making. Like, I don't bother with the germ resistance. You never want to rely on the germ resistance pills because it's not guaranteed, and you're better off just controlling circumstances so your dupes don't get exposed to germs. Because otherwise you're just wasting coal, you're wasting polluted water on pincher pepper nuts. It's not good practice. Being able to cure food poisoning right away, like your dupes are probably going to get food poisoning at some point. Food poisoning isn't that bad, so I don't generally try to mitigate against it. These I think are mostly for slime lung, to be honest. But being able to cure food poisoning when it comes up right away is quite convenient, so the dupes aren't hogging the bathrooms. Allergy medication, I generally don't take allergic dupes, but if you get one from like the freeze pod or something, like it's fairly economical. I mean, it actually takes a lot of blossom seeds, so you would only do this if you were growing bristle blossoms. If you have buddy buds generating floral scent, don't bother because you're not going to have the seeds. But yeah, I think it's okay. And then you need the disease clinic and the sick bay to administer the zombie spores cure and the slime lung cure respectively. So I'm just going to put this in D. You do not ever want to use this. Like, zombie spores from spore kids, it's really bad, and you don't want to be spending steel and ranching sun nymph eggs specifically to cure zombie spores. What you should be doing is keeping an eye on where the spore kids are. They're usually very rare in oil biomes these days, but if you find one, keep an eye on the germs overlay. Keep an eye out for the sound that the spore kids make, and slowly tile in the areas diagonally until it's just the spore kid left, and then just block it off. Just don't worry about it. Like, eventually just vacuum it out and just dig it out. Remove the plant. Don't go in areas with zombie spores. Just leave it. It's not worth it. And then the sick bay. I mean, balm lilies and phosphorite are fairly easy to come by. You'll usually find a lot of wild balm lilies that you don't use for anything else on maps of jungle biomes. So considering how often your dupes will get slime lung, as long as you don't dig up slime that has the germs and let it just out of the colony, you don't need to use this too much. But being able to cure slime lung when it happens is important. So I am going to put it in B tier, because if you do have a breach, it only takes one breach of the slime lung germs from some dug up slime to fill all the polluted oxygen, and then it just spreads and multiplies throughout the map and becomes very annoying. And eventually it ends up becoming almost inevitable that your dupes are going to get it if they're not just running around everywhere in exosuits. So being able to cure it when it happens is important. And if you have, if your dupes are having trouble breathing, it reduces their breath gain rate. So if you have areas full of carbon dioxide, slime lung can basically kill a dupe if they don't have time to breathe properly. So it is important to cure it, especially on slow moving dupes. So I think I'll put the sick bay in B tier. But the best strategy with zombie spores by far, just avoid them. Don't cure them. Don't ranch sun nymphs to cure them. We have sun nymphs on our current playthrough, so we could cure some of the zombie spores just to see what it looks like, but I don't recommend it. Right. Hand sanitizers. These are okay. Bleach stone is a fairly rare commodity, so you wouldn't necessarily want to use it on these. They are very space efficient. You would use them on rockets. I generally don't use them that often, but there are circumstances where they are useful. where you don't want to put a sink on rockets, where you're on a planet where you're interacting with germs, like the marshy asteroid with the tree, perhaps. But the bleach stone requirement is a bit of a deal breaker. You raise shine bugs anyways for the amazing rads. Yeah, that's true. That's actually a way of dealing with slime bug as well. Is I've ranched shine bugs specifically for the radiation near a geyser to kill off the germs coming out the geyser. But I don't end up at sun bugs. I just have shine bugs. I guess I end up with a few sun bugs. But yeah, that's that. Massage table. I'm going to put this in D tier as well. This is a trap. If your dupes are getting stressed, you do not want to waste the power on a massage table to de-stress them. What you want to do is you want to put them on a schedule where they're asleep. Because when a dupe work all the time. So the dupe will go to their bed, you can put a carpet under their bed for additional stress reduction. When they're sleeping, their stress will go down by minus 20% per cycle just from sleeping. And usually that is enough to get the stress down to manageable levels. Just have them go to sleep, put the carpet under the bed. That's good enough. It doesn't use any power. It doesn't require a dedicated room. I think they need to rework massage tables so they provide some kind of benefit other than reducing stress, because there's just no point when you can just put a dupe on a sleep-only schedule. They are technically more efficient. They reduce the stress faster, but I wouldn't use it. I wouldn't use power to get the extra efficiency unless I just had a load of free power. And most of the time your dupes aren't going to be stressed anyways. If you're handling stuff properly and proactively, your dupes shouldn't be getting stressed. Bleach stone is not hard to produce. 1 chlorine vent will support 2 puff princes. Yeah. So to that I say, are you going to set up a puff branch just for hand sanitizers? Do you have a chlorine vent on your asteroid? Because you're not guaranteed that. On my current run, we've got chlorine vents on... You're guaranteed the chlorine vents on the... I think one on the marshy asteroid and one on the gassy moo asteroid. I think you're guaranteed those ones. But you're probably not going to go through all that effort just for hand sanitizer. You do it for like water weeds or geotuning, I imagine. But that's my logic on that with the hand sanitizer. You would rather just do other things. And I presume you mean the squeaky puffs and not the puff princes, because the puff princes don't produce a lot of bleach stone at all. Flood the oil biome with chlorine. Yeah, that's a good idea as well. And then we've got the sink. I'm just going to use Nest here. Use them in plumb bathrooms, get rid of germs. Very straightforward. You just plumb them with the toilets. Definitely the best way of getting germs off your dupes. If they fit, and if you've got the plumbing nearby. You'd use hand sanitizers in the cases where you don't have room for the stuff. Really? That's interesting. This is clearly a sign I haven't done enough stuff with squeaky puffs. That's a lot of water weeds off of 1 puffed. Yeah, I guess if you are just having puff princes in there, it could be enough bleach stone for hand sanitizer. Yeah, maybe I'll move it up to B tier. Like, if you're not using the bleach stone for anything else, there probably is the best use for it if you've got germy areas and stuff. But yeah, I've got a big problem in my current game where I miscalculated the amount of bleach stone it required for geotuning our cool steam vent by a factor of 10. So we blew through all of our bleach stone in like 20 cycles. And now I've got more dupes than I can actually handle off that cool steam vent. So I need to think about something with that. Right, I'm kind of running out of time, and we've still got a lot of lists left to go. So, the Tasteful Memorial. No strong opinion on this. My dupes don't die. Forehead, just don't let your dupes die. Easy. Triage cot, pretty good. If your dupes get injured early on when they're scolded, having just being able to sit here and be treated and rest up is nice. You can get one doctor for your colony, and they'll speed up the treatment by quite a lot. And also, dupe's breath decreases at a slower rate on a triage cot. So you can set these up outside your base and they'll generally be okay. So that's a cool fact about those. I like those. Wash basins, they're not great. I'm going to put them in this category as well. I don't think they're quite as annoying as outhouses, but you are going to end up with bottles of polluted water that will off-gas early game. If you don't get rid of them fast enough. And that can give you some stuff. Yeah, let me look it up, Leofar. Look up the triage cot. So, it does minus 20% stress per cycle, and plus 1% breath per cycle, per second. So yeah, it counteracts the effect of slime lung, and it allows duplicants without slime lung to be treated in oxygen-free environments. So you can put your dupes on triage cots, and they won't breathe. We must find a way to use this information. Yeah, I didn't know it either, but that's why I set up all my triage cots. Yeah, it's funny. Hospital in space, woo. I mean, I set all mine up in a CO2 zone, but there's exosuits anyway, so it doesn't matter. Forcing your dupes to go. Oh, blimey. Right. Decontamination shower. Right. I've not used this at all yet, but there was something interesting I saw in the wiki when I was, looking up all the buildings to make this, because I haven't done it yet. So, it's made out of, let's see. It's made out of metal ore, and it requires lead. It removes germs from dupes who walk past it in the direction similar to sinks. It disinfects people wearing oxygen masks and atmo suits, and they're the only wash stations that will do this. So if you want to decontaminate a dupe through their suit, this is how you do it. It pollutes a lot of water. It pollutes minus 100 kilograms per use of polluted water. So if you want to pollute a lot of water very quickly, you can send your dupes through them. But I don't think they're generally that useful. But I'm going to put it in no strong opinion because I just haven't built them yet. I think that's generally what this category is for, to be honest. This I'm just going to put in B tier. Because I have used it, it's okay, it gets the job done, but it is awkward to build around. Aeropods, I like these. Pretty good use of early game diamond. They provide a lot of decor, even when empty. Once you, you'll usually find diamond on the map in the oil biomes to make these with, and it will really help get your decor up in your Great Halls very efficiently. You don't even have to put plants in them. They'll be fine just on their own, and then you can use that other tile for something else. Arcade cabinet. This is pretty good. I'm gonna put it in B tier. It's a lot of power early on for the morale. Once you've got the power, it's good, but you do need conductive wires for it. Actually, I'm gonna put it in A tier. It's pretty easy to manage. Two can play on it at the same point. Very easy to fit in your base. There's no special requirements other than the power consumption, so I think A tier is good for that. Beach chairs. I don't like these. They provide a lot of morale, but the dupe spends so long in the chair, it really messes up your schedules, and it's just very annoying for me to use. You don't need the sun lamps. You can get the required amount of light with regular lights if you arrange them in a very specific way. So the power consumption isn't too bad, but they spend so long in them, it's just annoying. Your dupes end up exhausted. I haven't quite figured out how to do the scheduling for them, so I'm putting them in D tier. Portraits, these are pretty good. I'm going to put these in A tier. Very good way of getting decor on walls. I'm just going to put all these paintings up here. Reed fiber is pretty abundant in the mid game once you've got some Drecos, once you've got some Thimble Reeds. I do like it. All three sizes are pretty good. They should increase stamina more when using it. I think they do. If I go to the beach chair, so they gain 50% per cycle, which isn't awful, and they do reduce stress while they're in it. It's just so much time. I just don't like it. Feel free to fight me. But yeah, I like all the paintings. You fit them where they go. Pretty easy to fit. They're not temperature dependent like plants. So in terms of wall mounted decor, ceiling mounted decor, it's pretty good. And you can customize them now with the new update, so you can choose which painting goes where, which I like. Lights. I'm going to put these in S tier because lit workspace plus 15% to whatever task your loop is doing is really good. It's not, you don't necessarily need it for tasks that have attribute-based skill. Like, yes, you should have your research building near a lamp to get the lit workspace plus 15%, but when your dupe is already getting plus 400% research speed from their attribute, plus 15 doesn't make a huge difference. But it's really useful for menial tasks. When dupes eat, they will regain calories 15% faster. They'll go from eating 30,000 calories per cycle to 34,500 per cycle. When they go into the bathroom, they'll go to the bathroom 15% faster. All these little tasks that you can't otherwise speed up, lights will speed up. So put these wherever you can. It's like one of the first things I do with my automation is light up everything that has a yellow bar. It doesn't apply to ranching, because ranching usually has a fixed animation at the grooming station. So that's a bit of a trap. But anything else with a yellow bar generally that doesn't have a fixed animation and eating all benefit from the 15%. So definitely build these whenever you can. Build them next to metal refineries, build them next to rock crushers, all that jazz. Comfy beds. They do take up more space than cots. The benefits aren't amazing. The decor is nice. Extra stamina is a little good, but like the actual bonus isn't that much compared to how much stamina a dupe recovers from sleeping anyways. You definitely don't need them. They are better now that the private bedrooms have been added and there's extra morale. I still don't think they're 100% necessary, and if you have a lot of dupes, if you have like loads of dupes, you probably don't need to bother because it just takes up a lot of space compared to cots. But they're okay. Better now that the higher tier of room was added, yeah. Climbing up stuff too has fixed animation to make your path straight as possible. Yes, that is true. That doesn't get sped up by lit workspace. Let's see, the roof molding. I like this. I'm going to put this in A tier. It's very cheap early on. You just make it with granite. Adds a lot of decor early on. It takes some time to build, but if you have like a proper dedicated builder, they can build it quickly. I don't tend to use the corners that much, realistically. But I'm not going to separate them. It's pointless. Cots. I'm going to put these in can't avoid usually. You don't want your dupes just falling asleep on the floor until you get comfy beds. Or ladder beds. Like, come on. Sleeping is very important because otherwise your dupes get exhausted. They don't recover stamina as quickly asleep on the ground. They get sore backs, lowered athletics penalties from not sleeping in a bed. Just give your dupes beds, please. Coffee machine. It's a bit niche. I put it in B tier because you'll usually find wild pincher peppers in jungle biomes that will last for a while. The boost to morale is pretty good from drinking coffee. Getting the water is fairly convenient. It's low power. But you will eventually run out of pincher peppers if you're getting a lot of dupes using this. So that's why I'm putting it at B tier. Like, fairly easy to set up, but eventually, like, I wouldn't bother unless I knew I was going to have a pincher pepper nut farm anyways, and they're kind of optional. You probably want it more for the food than for the coffee. Hey Laser Beams, how you doing? We're doing a tier list video tonight instead of the regular stream. We're putting all the buildings in a tier list, and I've explained everything so far. I've got to go to bed in like half an hour, so we're kind of rushing through a lot of this stuff. The automation stuff, I don't even know what I'm going to do for this. But yeah, I have a few other tier lists on my YouTube. Hold on, let me turn caps off. Here it is. But yeah, we're having fun. This was a big one that I was planning for a while. I thought I'd do it live because there's a few buildings I haven't used that I just wanted opinions on. And I thought it was handy. So yeah. What did I just move? Coffee machine. Right. The flower pot. This is very good. I guess I'll put it in A tier. You use it to get your early Great Hall. Planting a plant and getting the plus 20 decor from the plant is enough to make it a Great Hall. The Great Hall morale bonus is very high. Definitely worth rushing that, and that's the easiest way to get that. Eventually it becomes kind of outdated, like you replace it with other decoration things, and if you're going to have plants anyway, you'd have them in aeropots, but it's good for the early game. Ceiling pots I don't generally use as much. Like, you usually have space for a floor pot. I guess there's no reason in principle why it's worse. Yeah, no need for decorator as well makes them good. But then the fact that the plants are temperature dependent is kind of annoying. I'm going to put the wall pot specifically in B tier. It fulfills the same function, it's just a bit more awkward to place. There's like 1 or 2 times where I've used the wall pot and it's fit in a place I couldn't fit a floor pot. But I think ceiling pots are better. Yeah, early game dense decor. Yeah, very good. The tombstone no opinion thing, they make great mass increases for areas you need to stabilize temperatures, especially out of igneous, 800 kilograms out of the best rock for it. It's really interesting. Use tombstones for temperature regulators. Blimey, you're gonna have to post on the Discord. I want to see that. It's crazy. I don't think I'd do it just out of principle. I feel like I'd be tempting fate if I built tombstones. I didn't have any dead dupes. Hot tub. Right. I don't like this. I'm going to put it in C tier. It's pretty good when it's up and running, but you need to get the water to 37 degrees exactly, and the building seems to have some kind of weird temperature exchange with the environment. If I go to hot tubs... Yeah, the water will cool rapidly. It's low power. If you can get the water to it at the right temperature, it's pretty good. The dupes like to hang out in there, lower stress, pretty good morale boost. It does consume bleach stone, so again, you're going to have the whole puff problem. Or the chlorine, refining the chlorine problem. I think it goes in C, because it's fiddly, but the payoff is probably better than the beach chair, because the dupe isn't in it like the whole day. It's like around 4 schedule blocks instead of around 8. Which is more manageable. But even then, I still wouldn't really bother. Ice statues. I like these a lot. Not for the intended use, but if I have ice and I want to melt it, it's quite convenient to just build an ice statue and have it melt. I don't use them for decor. I just use them to melt ice. It's pretty good. I think it's quicker than a temp shift plate. Juicer. I'm going to put this in B tier. It's kind of niche because you don't always have mushrooms, bristle blossoms, and mealwoods growing in your base at the same time. But you do sometimes. And then it's very easy to run. Like if we go to the juicer bit here. Like very low power. So long as you have all of the ingredients, it's a pretty good bonus. And it gives strength too. I have built these a few times. We've got the jukebox. This is going to be... I'm going to put this in A tier as well. It's very easy to run, similar to the arcade cabinet. Slightly less power. It will run off a regular wire. I think it's slightly less morale as well, but all the dupes can dance in front of it. It's very good. We have, let's see, the sculpting block. I don't generally bother with these because they're too high. I mean, 2 tiles high. They're made of stone. But if you want a floor-based decoration, you want a metal block. It's more decor. Metal is renewable. Once you've got volcanoes. And the decor bonus is better. So I wouldn't bother with sculpting blocks in general. The early game, like, you don't need the decor. I would just wait until late game to add the decor. S tier meta statues. So the thing is, I don't really want to put decor items in S tier because you don't need them, do you? Like, they're beneficial to your dupes, but like, I'm not sure I'd always go out of my way to do it. Like, obviously you go out of your way to avoid heavy wires being in places, but it's not gonna, like, the survival of your colony is not dependent on your puffed sculpture made out of gold. But it is very good. I think I'll put it in A tier. Temperature plates made of ice will also almost instantly exchange temperature and melt. Yeah, the ice statues do the same thing, pretty much. So that's why they're in A tier. Marble statues, I like these a lot. Let's actually compare them quickly. So obviously you make these out of granite or precious rock. It's interesting. It's plus 20 decor over 8 tiles. You make it out of granite, plus 20% total decor. The metal tile has the same radius, we can fit 2 of them in the same place. I think deep fried peanut butter is right. I think the metal block is strictly better. But there is some cool artwork on this. But I think in most cases you would just put 2 metal blocks instead of a marble block. But if you're going to use stone for decoration, I would use the marble block over the sculpting block. So mechanical surfboard. I'm going to put this in B tier. Power requirement is low, water requirement is low, but it spills water out the bottom. So generally, I build these in bases where I have fish tanks and other water tanks. They're fairly easy to slot in, and the morale bonus is pretty good, I think. I tend to have a spot to fit them. And the need more stuff to use. I mean, it is a fair amount of power. But the water isn't actually consumed, it's just dropped through the bottom. And it doesn't last too long. The dupe doesn't take too long surfing. I'm saving C for recreation buildings that are more hassle than they're worth, and I don't think the mechanical surfboard falls into that category. Like, you'll probably have somewhere you can stick it and the water leak isn't a problem. The hot tub requires very specific temperature management, and it takes up lots of schedule blocks. And this takes up even more schedule blocks to the point where you just wouldn't use it. That's my logic anyways. Gas and liquids with pipes in that configuration would be hydrogen and supercoolant for a cold brick. We use water and freeze it. Mess tables. I mean, you can... Your dupes don't have to eat at tables, but, like, why wouldn't you? And they would prefer... Like, you want the Great Hall for the... I'm going to put it in S tier. I know you don't need mess tables, but you want the Great Hall for the morale bonus. You want all your dupes to eat in the same spot. You don't want all your dupes to eat in the freezer. Just give them mess tables. It's not strictly necessary. You can put it off for a while early on, but, like, just do it. You can avoid them, but you shouldn't. Then we've got the monuments. I don't think this is really applicable. Like, they're obviously very pretty. It's a win condition. It's the win condition of the game is to have the resources and the tech to build this. The actual decor isn't that big. You build it because you can build it, not because it's good. Like, it's plus 10 decor over a 5-tile radius for the head. And then the midsection is the same. And the monument base is the same. And it's just a lot of space. You wouldn't build it unless you wanted to, so... I'm just going to put it there. I don't think it's really applicable with tier list, to be honest. Park sign for nature reserves and stuff. This is a good morale boost as well, but I think it's quite situational. Like, it depends on how you set up your base. Actually, it's not that situational. You can make natural tiles and then pit plant in them, and I've done that before. And the morale bonus is pretty good. I think I'm going to put it in A tier, because if you can set up your base in a way that your dupes just walk through it, like going through the corridors of your base, or going out the atmosuit docks, like you should do it because like the plus morale bonus is very good. I think it's actually +8. Is it? Maybe they changed it, or maybe I'm just going crazy. Oh no, it is +6. Yeah, it's a lot of morale, and you can make them artificially with pit planting and forming natural tiles. So yeah, I think A tier is pretty good. It can be quite cumbersome, but it's usually worth doing. And early game, it's quite easy to do as well. By careful sort of ladder placement, conserving plants. I don't tend to bother, but that's not because it's not good. It's just because I'm lazy and I like to lay out my bases very neatly. But I have built them in the late game, artificially. Let's see, pedestals. They're pretty good. If you get lots of artifacts, they're good. I wouldn't prioritize them early game, but late game they're very good because the artifacts will have so much decor on them. I think B tier is good for that. Sauna, I'm going to put that in B tier as well. The steam isn't actually that bad of a requirement because all you need to do is set a steam pipe to 100 grams per second through a valve and dedicate it to the saunas and have it overflow back into a steam room. And then the steam will get to the sauna at room temperature and it will just go into the sauna. The dupe will be fine, and then the water will come out. I think I actually this actually generates heat. It says the steam comes out the water comes out the same temperature as the steam, but that's not true. I've tried it with room temperature steam, and it comes out as nearly boiling water. So you can actually generate heat with this. I think I figured out that the heat from the saunas could technically be used to run a steam turbine to power them, but I don't think you'd ever bother. But the steam management isn't too bad. Let's have a look at the morale bonus. Yeah, 60 watts of power is nothing. Morale bonus is +2. It's not that good. I think B tier is fine for it. Visit the wiki. It says it deletes. Efficient way to destroy heat to water that is being output is fixed at 80 degrees C. Yes, so the wiki says that the water is fixed at 80 C. So it deletes heat if the steam is coming in hot. But in my base, the steam is coming in cold because it's running at low volume, so it can go through the pipe, which makes it practical to actually build. So in that case, it's producing heat. But yes, if you feed it hot steam, it will delete heat. But that makes it more difficult to use, and then I probably wouldn't bother. Because you don't want hot steam in your base, really. Let's see. Oh, this is the sculpting block. I think the large sculpting block can go up here. It's at least comparable to this. The regular sculpting block I would never bother with. Soda fountains, I think B tier. You're going to get carbon dioxide piped from your polymer presses and from your natural gas generators. And then you can stick it in here with a canister filler. It's pretty decent. Just compare it again. The morale is +4. It gives a science boost as well, which is nice. Extra skill leveling on all your dupes. It's a lot of power though, for what it's doing. And you do need to feed it water as well. I think B tier is a good place for it. You'd A soda fountain. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, you usually do end up with carbon dioxide in pipes. And you can pump it pretty quickly. Yeah, and the morale bonus is better. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah. Like, the power usage is high, but not prohibitively high, and the morale is a lot, and the science is a lot. And you're going to get carbon dioxide in your base, so I think A tier makes sense. Good idea. They went the sun lamp. Don't bother with this. It's so much power. You'd only use it for the beach chairs. It's a whole kilowatt of power. It's ridiculous. You need refined metal and glass. You can literally use regular lights to grow. You can use regular lights and stack them in such a way. I've done that in one of my previous runs. So just don't bother with this. And don't bother with the beach chair either. It's also so much power that you wouldn't bother growing plants with it, like gas grass needs a lot of light, but you wouldn't bother because you're. I mean, just don't bother with gas grass, but it's just like don't bother with this. The wind tunnel. This is. I'm gonna put this in C tier. It's fun, but it's a lot of power, and the dupes spent ages in it, and it requires quite a specific room. Like it's 1.2 kilowatts. It won't fit in your typical room structure because it's 6 tiles high. It moves a lot of gas around as well. So that could be challenging if you're in a base. It can make sort of low oxygen zones that stress your dupes out. So I usually put mine in an exosuit zone if I build one. The morale bonus is pretty good, but they do spend a long time in there. See you later, Leofar. Enjoy your vaccination. Soda fountain size works well for Great Halls. That's very true. Oh, sorry, I didn't read your highlighted message on the Tasteful Memorial. Yeah, lots of heat storage volume. That's good. Right, let's keep going. I've got about 20 minutes left to get through all of these. I'm going to be late again, aren't I? Right, water cooler. It's pretty good early on. Lets you set up the room pretty quickly, but it kind of falls off. The morale bonus isn't that high. I think the best recreation building is the party line phone. Very low power. Morale bonus up to +4 if you have dupes and lots of planets. Very small. Dupe doesn't use it for too long. I think it's the best recreation building, and I always have it in my Great Halls, and basically any room that I use for recreation. And you can put it on rockets too. That's a really good use for it. It's the best recreation building for rockets by far. Lets you have a Great Hall and a rocket. Get a lot of morale on there. Ladder beds, very niche, but obviously fit well in rockets. You want these in rockets to save space. I'm going to stick this with the wall toilet. Where did I put the wall toilet? Yeah. Good for rockets. Save space. Basically a 1x2 bed and a ladder. It's good. Just don't use them for your main base because the dupes will get woken up from people running past them. Ammo suit docks. I'm going to put you can't really avoid them, to be honest. You're going to need them at some point. I don't think I need to elaborate on that, really. Clothing refashionator. Once you've got reed fiber, making everyone clothes is really good. You should give everyone primo garb eventually for the decor. It just takes a lot of reed fiber, so I'm not going to put it in S, but it's a good use of reed fiber because it will always apply to your dupes. Crafting stations. I put this in A tier. It usually is worth making crafting stations and oxygen masks, depending on where stuff is on your map. It lets you explore in the CO2 pit very easily. Don't use oxygen masks for going in hydrogen and chlorine pits, because it doesn't stop the eye irritation. Use it just for CO2 areas. But it lets you explore further down from your base earlier on. I think it's useful and worth doing. Exosuit Forge. You can't actually avoid this either. Like, you need it to make exosuits. It's that straightforward. Make sure you put a light on it so they build the suits with the lights. We've moved on to the stations now, by the way. I'm going to skip the breaks and we're just going to get to it because this is already running quite long. Farm stations, I'm going to put this with the fertilizer, synthesizer. Being able to double your crop yield is really good. You just need dedicated farmer dupes, but it doesn't take too long for the farmers to use them. Geotuners. I'm going to put this... I've only just started using them, but I'm going to put it in B tier. Like, getting more water out of geysers and stuff is really good, but you are going to blow through the bleach stone and stuff quicker than you might think. So you don't want to overdo it. But it's definitely something for your researchers to do that helps the colony. So I put it in B tier. Grooming stations, they're great. Ranches are great. You want critters to do a lot of stuff. Drecos, hatches are really good. Pips are really good. Slicksters are really good. you're going to want to ranch critters. These are the jet suit packs. I haven't used the jet suit packs before, but I'm going to put them in D. You have better uses for your petroleum, and there's a lot of frame rate lag associated with all the free movement dupes have in jet suits. So I generally wouldn't bother with them, but they are cool. Oxygen mask infrastructure goes up here. I generally recommend building oxygen masks before suits. If nothing else, that you're going to have rooms in your base where you're going to eventually put suit docks and checkpoints anyways, and it helps laying out your base in advance with these, and then you can just replace them later. Power control station. I don't typically bother with this. Like, if you have loads of refined metal from volcanoes, you can make microchips and get more power, but I don't really think power is that much of a constraint in this game. So I don't think I've ever built it, and I don't think I will. I think I'd rather just have the metal and just hoard it, like a dragon. Let's see. Research lab. You can't avoid this. You need a research tech. Very straightforward. We can put the supercomputer in there as well. In fact, I'm just going to put all the research buildings in there. Let's see. Material sciences as well. I can go there. Where's the supercomputer? Where is the supercomputer? Did I just miss that? I think I may have missed out the supercomputer from this list somehow. But it's in the can't avoid tier, believe it or not. The shearing station, Draco shearing is really good. I put that here as well. Best way to get reed fiber and plastic early on. If you don't have thimble reeds, you need it for reed fiber. And I think it is the best early game way of getting plastic, so definitely prioritize shearing your Dracos. Skill scrubber, niche, but occasionally useful. Like if you need to have like a, what is it? Like if you realize that you need a cook or something, like you can skill up your rancher in building early on, and then when you actually get to building your ranches, you can skill scrub them and swap them to ranching. It does take power and time, so I don't usually bother. Telescope is fine. Use it to explore star map. I'm going to put these both in B tier. Like, I don't really have a strong opinion on them, to be honest. I don't think I even have the telescope on here. Did this not actually upload all of the images? Well, just assume both the telescopes are in B tier. We're using supercooling to completely cancel out power demands when using power stations. I just find there's very few situations early game where I would solve my power problem with a power control station rather than putting in another generator. Textile loom, I'll put this in A tier as well. Go with the fashionator. Botanical analyzer. I don't prioritize this too much because seed mutation is very infrequent. And mutated seeds don't reproduce. So you're going to have to mutate a lot of seeds to actually use mutated plants for anything. I think there are certainly use cases, but you're not going to come across them unless you're specifically looking for them, irradiating loads of plants with your research reactor. Lead suits I don't really have a strong opinion on. Orbital data lab you need for research. Drywall. This has improved significantly now that you can just drywall stuff for decor. I put that in A tier. I mean, you might as well drywall rooms if you have the granite. I mean, it's not a huge bonus. It's 1 radius for decor, but it's +10 to every tile. if you have loads of rock, like on the Badlands, you can drywall most of your base and it will be beneficial. And then obviously there's the benefits from setting up space infrastructure as well. The Icy Maker and the Icy Fan. These I don't tend to use, but they're not bad. Like, early game, before you get the Thermo Aqua Tuner and stuff, you can use it to cool down an area if need be. Get dupes to make ice and then bring the ice over. Like, power-wise, it's quite efficient. The main problem is it takes dupe labor. But I have used it in a pinch. There was a run where I just made a big block of ice makers, and I just delivered the ice somewhere. The Icy Fan I generally wouldn't bother with, but again, I think it's pretty good early game. If you are making ice, if you need to use it. But I wouldn't rate it too high. In fact, I think I'm going to put it in D tier. You should be trying to cool things by having your dupes standing around cooling them. Making the ice is better, because you can take the ice somewhere and have it cool areas, you can build temperature plates and do it. But I wouldn't bother having a dupe stand around cooling something with a fan. Liquid Tepidiser it's very efficient at producing heat, but because it doesn't boil liquids, I find the use case is actually somewhat limited. And I think they've fixed the bug that allowed you to cycle it and get it over the boiling threshold. So I'm torn between S and A. It is the most efficient way of generating heat for power, but it's not going to boil anything. You generally produce a lot of waste heat with the metal refineries instead. I'm going to put it in A tier. It's a good way of getting heat, but with the metal refinery, you're getting heat and you're refining metal, which you need to do anyways. I don't really like the idea of just generating heat just for the sake of it. And eventually, like late game, you'll find volcanoes and stuff that you can use for heat instead. So, I mean, that's what I mostly recommend. But I'm not going to deny that it's efficient. Like, the space heater is not efficient. Like, 120 watts for 18 kDTU is just not good. It's not a lot of heating at all. I would rather actually just set up a liquid Tepidiser and cycle it. Like, the thing is, the amount of power this takes up is 960 watts, and it gets you 5 kDTUs of heating. Like, that's crazy efficient. So set one of these up somewhere, heat up some liquid, and just pipe the liquid around instead of using the space heater. I don't think you should ever use this. This will even work on a regular wire on its own thing. New players, heat bad. Next players like heat. Yeah, I agree with that. Oil wells. I wouldn't say you can't usually avoid them. You don't necessarily need oil for everything. They are pretty good. You get a lot of oil out for the water. You get natural gas as well. I'm going to put them in S tier. It's how you get oil. You can get it from leaky oil fissures, but that's not a lot of throughput, and it's just bothersome with the temperature. And melting plastic from glossy Drecos for naphtha, turning into sour gas, getting natural gas that way. That's a bit convoluted. I'll just put them in S tier. You can technically avoid them, but I don't think you ever should. Ore scrubbers, I don't bother with these. I would just rather manage germs by killing them at the source than applying chlorine in this machine. I mean, let's have a look at the wiki quickly. Where is it? Here it is. Leaky oil fissures are amazing. Build them into a petroleum boiler and enjoy all the heat savings. Yeah, there was one run, the Rime Time run. It was really useful, all the heat from that for heating up the Rime. That was very good. But yeah, it takes chlorine, removes germs. I don't know, I wouldn't bother. I just put the items in a room full of chlorine instead. Save the dupe labor. Sweepy docks, I don't generally use these. But I realize they are useful at cleaning up magma, and I think I've seen them be used to clean up magma. Oh, I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion on these, to be honest. I'm just going to leave it here. And feel free to let me know in the comments if you use Sweepy Docks for anything useful. Temp shift plate is an easy S. Just equalizing the temperature of the area around it, like the 3x3 area, is really good and instrumental to making a lot of things work. And just patching holes in being able to conduct heat and insulate heat, I like it a lot. And also, you can build ice temp shift plates and they melt really easily. If you want to get naphthy, you can build a plastic temp shift plate somewhere and have it melt. If you want to cover up a volcano, like a metal volcano, you make one out of coal and it will turn into a refined carbon tile and block the volcano. Very useful. Then thermo aquatuner. This is an obvious S pick as well. It's a lot of heat. It's a lot of power, but it moves so much heat from the liquid in the pipe to the machine itself. It basically just it's the most efficient way of moving heat, I would say. It's extremely good. You just need to build it in a steam temperature room, like a steam turbine room, so that the heat from the thermo aquatuner gets processed by the steam turbines. So yeah, it's really good, and generally what you should use for cooling most things. It kind of annoys me how many things in this game you should use this for, and there isn't a good alternative. What I mean is that preheated oil needs a lot less power to kick over than petrol, but cannot pump legit until thermium, right? If you build door mechanisms for getting... Yeah, I completely agree. Pumping the leaky oil is the most annoying thing because it comes out hotter than steel overheat temperature. But if you just put it straight into a petroleum boiler, it's super easy. And in my case, I just dissipated the heat into the environment because the whole map was cold anyways. But even then, it was still annoying. But yeah, plugging them straight into a petroleum boiler is the best way of doing it. The thermo regulator, I'm going to put this in B. It's not as efficient as the thermo aquatuner because gas holds less heat. But it only requires 240 watts, meaning you can hook up your regular base power to it very early on. And I like to use it to set up my freezers so that they're not on, so that I can set them up to my baseline and just run them super early. You can fill them with hydrogen, the pipes to cool, or you can fill them with natural gas. They both do a similarly good job, to be honest, depending on what geysers you have available, or vents. So specific use cases, but it's definitely not useless despite the fact that it's less efficient. Sometimes you don't need a whole thermo aquatuner. Automation stuff. Oh, blimey. My brain is not really great for this. I'm just going to lump all this automation stuff together. Like, let's see. Ribbons. I don't think there's really a lot of use for ribbons. Like, I haven't found many uses for them that you can't just do simpler via other means. So I'm going to put these in D tier. The actual sensors, like, you want to put Atmo sensors and hydro sensors on your pumps so that they don't pump empty too often. You want to set a minimum threshold for the pumps so that they're always getting a good tile of gas or liquid, because the pump still uses the full power even if it's only pumping a fraction of the capacity of the pipe. So you use these Atmo and hydro sensors to make sure that it doesn't hit that minimum, and I'd always recommend doing that, so they're S tier. Critter sensors, very useful for managing ranches. I don't think there's a better way of doing that, so I put that in S tier. Duplicate checkpoint is useless. I have not found a use for this. Let me know in the comments if you find one. So I put that in D. I've never found a reason to use it. Same for the germ sensor. I just don't think managing germs via automation is the way to do it. Just use automation to manage temperature and materials, like chlorine, to kill stuff instead of detecting the germs. The notifier I like to use for my Dreco ranches, like just to let me know when I need to wrangle a critter. It's good for early game ranches, like letting you know when to wrangle things. But generally, you should develop more robust systems later. I'd say the same for the hammer, except I don't think I'd ever use the hammer. Like, what? Am I supposed to remember specific sounds from the hammer? Like, is that how it works? I'm not going to remember specific hammer sounds. Pixel packs are really good. If you have the glass, there are a lot of decor, and you can put them everywhere. But it's a lot of glass, so I'll put it in A tier for that reason. The glass production is just kind of annoying. If I want to see automation, go watch the YouTube channel Base Manager. The host is implementing complex car level automation. Oh, interesting. I'm just going to put most of the general gates in here. Like, you use them to accomplish specific functions. I don't think you generally need to use these. Like, this is too complex for most things you need to do. Like, I would rather go about finding simpler solutions and use the ribbons, use the signal splitting, that sort of stuff. Motion sensors I put in S. This is what I use to automate all of my lights early on. Just detect when a dupe is in a room. It's very straightforward. Just definitely use it. Gas element sensors. These are occasionally useful. Like for stopping wood burners from producing too much carbon dioxide. Liquid sensors for similar reasons. Signal counter. I don't think I generally use this too much. Timer sensor. I do occasionally use this. It's very interchangeable with the cycle sensor. Weight plates are okay. Sometimes you want to build them to automate buildings when dupes stand on a specific tile, but I think usually you would use the motion sensor instead, because you could put it on the wall or the ceiling instead of the floor, and you might want a certain tile on the floor anyways. Yeah, these can go here. Manual switches, they're really good. Just use them to turn stuff off without having a dupe go to turn it off, and eventually replace it with a system that can do it automatically. But just while you're debugging stuff, it's really handy just having a regular automation switch. Much more handy than having a power switch. Let's see. Space scanners. I don't think you really use these much in Spaced Out. It's just for the regular asteroid again. Thermosensors, really handy for steam temperature rooms. Just any sort of case like petroleum boilers where you're trying to manage a temperature of something and it's just a pool of something, as opposed to being in a pipe, you need this. Wattage sensor. I like to combine this with pixel packs to make like a graphical display of how much power I'm using, but it's not too useful. You can hook this up with like the power shutoff as well to help stop your wires from overloading. It's not bad. I don't have a strong opinion on that. I haven't used the automation signal receivers, but I imagine for late game, going between different planets, they're really important, and less important on the classic style, where you have one main planet. But if you have lots of little planets, I imagine this is really important late game for automating rockets. Rad bolt sensor, I don't think I've ever used this. Radiation sensor, I don't think you need to use this, because most radiation sources in a game are fairly constant. So you should know whether there's radiation in an area or not. You shouldn't need a sensor to tell you. Auto sweepers, S tier. Saves your dupes from having to deliver stuff across the map. Very convenient for everyone involved. Very low power output. It's just mandatory to make sure your dupes aren't running around supplying stuff all the time once you build it into a system. You can't really avoid the conveyor belt stuff either. I mean, the thing is, I'm not going to put the conveyor stuff in S in the can't avoid tier, because like you can do the game without shipping stuff, but why would you? It's so convenient once you've got the power. So I think I'm just going to put all the shipping stuff in S. Conveyor loaders, very important. Maybe not all the shipping stuff. Conveyor meters, I've used these to drop off materials and stuff. I'm going to put these with the other meters. C tier. Like when I'm dropping off the algae and dirt and stuff to cook into solid tiles, I use this. Conveyor rail, S tier. Let's see, we've got the germ sensor. We don't need a germ sensor. Element sensor. I do use this for the automated ranches, for the hatches, the Risa build, to separate out the eggs. No, I use the conveyor filter for that. But I have used this in the past with separating out puffs and stuff, so that is useful. Thermosensor. I think you could argue this is useful as well. Yeah, I use this in volcano tamers to make sure that metal doesn't come out until it's a certain temperature, so I put that as an A tier. Conveyor receptacles. These are a bit niche, but I'm using them in the recent Hatch Ranch guide because they fill up pretty quickly and it lets you drop off resources evenly at lots of different conveyor sites. So I put that in B tier. Conveyor shut off again. I'm going to put this in S tier with the other shutoffs. It's just very, very handy. What's going on, my internet? It's very, very handy for just making sure that you can filter stuff efficiently. The solid filter, like, I think the argument can be made that it should go in D tier as well, but I'm going to put it in C tier because even though it does take power to use, it's the space efficiency can be quite relevant when you're trying to cram a load of conveyor stuff into a certain area. So I think that's the filter I'd use the most just because it saves space. The liquid and gas filters, I feel like most cases you can just build more space to accommodate the more complex filter setups, but the conveyors I've found it's been more cramped. So I'm going to put that in C tier for now. Wow, we're nearly done with this actually. RoboMiner, I'm going to put this in C tier. Generally, it's only really used for the regolith asteroid. You can use it to break up solidified tiles from like volcanoes and stuff, but you only get half the mass back. So you shouldn't generally use it very much unless you're harvesting the regolith. So I think I'd probably put it in D tier as well. It's kind of a trap. You should try and build designs to work without a RoboMiner, without the mining loss. I think I've actually gone through all the music on my playlist. So here we go. Repeating it. I don't feel strongly about the conveyor loaders. Gantries, I don't think you need to use them that often anymore, but I'm going to put it in no strong opinion. Conveyor fittings, or the fittings into the rocket, I don't have a strong feeling about. They're just necessary for rocket design. I've got the telescope here again. They'll just not put this up here. Yeah. Okay. That's not good. Payload launcher. I do like the payload launcher. I found it very useful in the one dupe per planet run recently. I managed to use it, but I imagine it's very needed just to move stuff between asteroids on those spaced out runs. So I'm going to put that in 8 here. Payload opener, again, is very useful. Like, with the targeting beacon, you use that to make sure it all lands in the right spot and it can just be shipped out. So that's 8 here. So we can go in here. Rocket control station, you don't really have a choice, you just have to use it. Rocket platform, similarly, you don't really have a choice. The regular telescope is here. I'm just going to put this with the enclosed telescope. Sometimes it's handy having the oxygen, and sometimes you don't really need it. Like, it depends on how far it is away from the base. But they're pretty much interchangeable. Like, the range, I think, is slightly different on the regular telescope. Let's see. So the regular telescope scans up to 3 hexes away. And the enclosed telescope has an extra range. Okay, so this is the thing. I'm very tempted to just move this to D tier, because I generally don't think you need to scan with the... Well, I don't know. I'm going to put it in C tier. I think generally you would want to set up an enclosed one instead when you're on a planet. And you would use the smaller one earlier on when you don't have the pipe, if you were in a spaced out map and you just need to scan immediately around you to find the nearest planet. The regular telescope is useful in the cab of the rocket itself. That's also true, I did not consider that. Well, that probably justifies putting up to B tier then. Yeah, because I was using a cartography module, but you could probably just use a regular telescope instead if you could fit it on a rocket. That's much better. I haven't got any of the rocket parts on this list, by the way. So the manual radbot generator, I'm going to put this in C tier. It's another niche building. Generally, you can find better sources of radiation in either shine bugs, space, crash satellites, wheezeworts, and build your radiation infrastructure around them. But this does let you turn uranium into radbolts and get that initial radiation research. So you do occasionally need it. The one thing I would suggest, though, is put a new a mechanized airlock underneath it, so you can automate it. Otherwise, you're going to waste uranium making radbolts and firing them at the science's terminal, because the radbot generator does not. The manual radbot generator does not have an automation port, so you'll need a door for that. Radbot chamber. I haven't used this. For radiation research, I would argue that you can't really avoid the... Well, you can avoid the generator, but this is how you collect radiation from the map, which I think is the best way of doing it, so I think that would go in S tier. The joint plate, I haven't really used this. The reflector, I would also put here, because you need it to basically tell the radiation where to go. The joint plate can let you do it through tiles, and it requires more research. I think I put that in A tier, actually. It could be useful, but I haven't needed it yet. But there's probably circumstances where you do just need it. Radiation lamp. I haven't used this. What does it even do? Emits radiation when powered. So you literally just plug it in and it produces radiation. And it consumes uranium. That's interesting. So it just generates the radiation instead of the radbolts. I guess you use it to irradiate an area to delete germs. It seems somewhat useful, but the fact that it consumes uranium is not very good, because you'll eventually run out of that. I guess it consumes at a very slow rate. I can see that being useful for geysers. I'm going to put that in B tier, but I haven't actually used it, and I might consider using it in future. Then we have the research reactor. I don't have a strong opinion on this. I haven't used it yet. It produces a lot of power and a lot of heat. It produces a lot of heat. That's what it does with the uranium. It's the main reason to use it. It's a late game thing, provides a lot of complex management, but does generate so much heat that you'll get so many steam turbines off it. I think it'll probably go in B tier. Like, you won't set it up early on, but if you need massive amounts of power, that's the way to go. The uranium centrifuge, I think that's in D tier, because as far as I can tell, it's so inefficient compared to beaters. Like, if we look at the actual building, let's see. No, not Pokemon uranium. Yeah, so it literally turns 20% of uranium into enriched uranium and removes 80% of it as depleted uranium. Whereas, if we go to the beaters, the beaters literally consume at 90% efficiency, as opposed to 20% efficiency. So there's so much more efficiency from the beaters. I don't think you would ever use a uranium centrifuge. Like, you will find beaters somewhere. You should just set them up instead of using a uranium centrifuge. They need to make that building better. The rad lamp is better than the manual radbot generator because it can be used to feed 5 or more radbot generators early on. That is true, but that consumes a lot of power to do that. Like, the radbot, I think the main benefit of the manual radbot generator is you don't need the regular radbot generators, which are being powered. Yeah, we're still going Leofar. We're very nearly done. I've got to go in like 5 minutes. We've actually done all the main buildings. I've left some map generator buildings in here as well. Teleporters are obviously good if you have them, but I know some people like to do challenge runs without teleporters, so I'm going to put them in S tier. But it really does speed up the early game, being able to take stuff off the main planet without having to set up rockets. It's much faster. And then I also have the anti-entropy thermonullifier, and it consumes a very small amount of hydrogen to produce a relatively small amount of cooling. It's pretty good. It's very easy to run, but you've got to set up your infrastructure so that you can, so it's near this, so you can take advantage of the cooling. It does like sort of locationally tie in what you're doing for your cooling there. The hydrogen is negligible, and it can condense sour gas into liquid methane, but the cooling rate is so low you probably wouldn't use it for that. You'd probably use something more heavy duty. But it can basically supplement whatever else that you're cooling on your map. It's my perspective on it. But yeah, I think that's the whole list. I think we're actually done. I think there were 1 or 2 missing buildings on there that I've just lumped in with other buildings. Like the supercomputer is obviously mandatory for research. I don't know why that was missing. But yeah, here's the list. I'm going to go through it very slowly now at the end of the video. If you have any comments on this, let me know in the YouTube comments, and I'll respond to them. I'm kind of aware I've rushed the end bit. I didn't realize it was going to take so long. This is nearly 4 hours long. Christ. But yeah, here's my S tier picks. Got A tier down here. Most of the buildings are here. Got B tier Star Wars here. I love the placeholder image I got for the spice grinder. Then we have the C and the D tier. So these are the niche buildings that you'll occasionally find uses for. And D, I just wouldn't recommend building these in general. There are just better solutions to whatever problems you have. And then you can't avoid these early on, but they're not good. And these are the ones that I really want comments about. Where do you think these buildings should be placed on the tier list? I don't think it makes sense to tier the monument, but stuff like the diamond press, the rocket control fittings, sweepy, perhaps even the automation stuff and like the rad bolt chamber and stuff. I just don't really have any idea about it. So please let me know in the comments what you like. And that's it. This is the whole building tier list. This is ridiculous. I can't even zoom out and show it all properly. What am I going to do for the thumbnail? You'll just have to watch the whole video to find out what my opinions were. I guess I'll go back to this view. Okay. There we go. But yeah, thanks for watching. It's been a long evening, to be honest. There's a lot of discussion, and some very generous individual earlier on gave us 5 subs, which is incredible. So thank you very much again for that. I usually play Oxygen Not Included Mondays to Fridays, 7 to 11 GMT-ish. I do play other games. I've been playing some Noita and Potioncraft and things. And if you want to watch me live, the best thing to do is follow me on Twitch, and you'll get notifications whenever I go online with whatever I'm doing. Subscribing on YouTube is also helpful, because then you'll get notifications when I upload stuff. You'll see my community posts where I update people on things. And there's also the Discord server, which is a place where we all hang out and we post Oxygen Not Included stuff and memes. And yeah, thank you all for sticking around. It's been a very enjoyable evening. I'm going to wrap it up here because I'm very tired after this massive diatribe. Fishies are all right. I think I'm trying to get to sleep now. And I'm going to go raid someone. I'm not sure who, but I will see you later. Bye for now. I'm gonna go raid J Crown because I was watching him earlier, and he's just started a max difficulty run on a radioactive ocean planet. I'm sure he has some interesting opinions on the different oxygen not included buildings. But yeah, thanks for watching. We're gonna go raid. All right, we're gonna be raiding them in 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bye for now.